A team of medical specialists rushed across the room, working frantically to save the patient, the beloved daughter of the renowned businessman Jonathan Miller. Eveline Miller had fallen from her residential building and was hospitalized in a critical state. She was virtually lifeless, her body battered from the impact, a severe head injury causing a rapid loss of blood. Despite the doctor's best efforts, she remained unresponsive to treatment. As the medical team struggled to revive Eveline, her soul drifted away from her body. "Where am I?" Eveline murmured, glancing around the unfamiliar space before her gaze landed on the motionless form lying on the hospital bed. It took her a moment to recognize herself. Panic surged through her as she rushed toward the doctor administering CPR. "Please don't stop. Don't give up on me," she pleaded, her voice desperate. But no one heard her. No one saw her. They weren't God, and they couldn't bring back the dead. "No, I can't die. I won't let them relish in my death." Her voice trembled as images of betrayal flashed before her eyes. The cruel smirk on Tiffany's face as she shoved her off the balcony, and the cold, detached stare of her husband Gabriel as he stood by and did nothing. It was then that the horrifying truth struck her. Her so-called best friend, and the man she had loved since childhood, had conspired to kill her. Eveline had always dreamed of marrying Gabriel, despite the rumors that his heart belonged to another. She had ignored the whispers, convinced herself they were false, and pursued him anyway. But one night changed everything. A reckless encounter led to a forced marriage, orchestrated by her father, Jonathan, who compelled Gabriel to take responsibility. Gabriel resented her for it. He never wanted the marriage, never hid his disdain. But he had no choice. His father, Richard Winston, had been Jonathan's closest friend and held Eveline in high regard. For years, Eveline had tried to win Gabriel's affection. She endured his indifference, clung to the rare moments when she thought his icy exterior was thawing. And then, after 3 years of a loveless marriage, she had conceived his child. She had believed naively that the baby would change things, that Gabriel would finally look at her as more than an obligation. But now everything was gone. Her life, her child, and the last shred of hope she had clung to. And the ones responsible were the very people she had trusted the most. Eveline wept as she stood beside her lifeless body, watching the last light fade from the room. "If I had another chance, I would never let them destroy me." A single tear slid down her cheek as darkness consumed her. "Wake up, young miss. You're going to be late for class." Eveline jolted awake, her heart pounding. The voice was familiar, painfully so. Her breath caught in her throat as she turned, her wide eyes landing on Susan, her nanny. Impossible. Eveline's fingers clenched the sheets. Her surroundings were unmistakably familiar. She was in her childhood bedroom. "How?" she whispered. "If you're feeling unwell, I should inform Master," Susan said, her expression etched with concern. She reached out to check Eveline's forehead, startling her with the touch. Eveline sucked in a sharp breath. She was alive. Not just alive, she was young again. Her pulse thundered as realization dawned. She had been reborn. "I'm fine," Eveline said hastily, grabbing Susan's wrist before she could leave. "It was just a nightmare, nothing more." Susan eyed her skeptically but nodded. As soon as the door shut, Eveline pressed a trembling hand against her chest, trying to steady her racing heart. A second chance. God had granted her a second chance. This time, she wouldn't be a fool blinded by love. Throwing off the covers, she rushed to the bathroom, glancing at the calendar on the wall. The year, the date, everything aligned with her past life. She was 20 again, freshly enrolled in Aspen College, working toward her master's in finance, right before the chain of events that would eventually lead to her downfall. Eveline's chest tightened. Jonathan. Her father had loved her dearly. What would he have done if he had found out about her death? The mere thought made her stomach twist. She descended the stairs to find him at the breakfast table, scanning the headlines of the newspaper. For a moment, she simply watched him. The strong man who had always shielded her. The father who had unknowingly pushed her into the arms of a man who never wanted her. "Eve?" His deep voice jolted her from her thoughts. Without hesitation, Eveline rushed to him, wrapping her arms tightly around his frame. Jonathan stiffened before exhaling with a chuckle. "What's this? You're usually not this affectionate so early in the morning." Eveline clung to him, savoring the warmth of his embrace. "Are you sure you're all right?" "Susan said you looked unwell," he continued, his tone laced with concern. She quickly stepped back. "I'm fine. It was just a bad dream." Jonathan studied her, but when she offered no further explanation, he let it slide. She couldn't tell him the truth. No one would believe her. After finishing breakfast, Eveline left for Aspen College, her emotions a tangled mess. Seeing herself return to college felt surreal. The towering gates of Aspen loomed ahead, the car rolling to a stop in front of the grand building. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out. "Eve!" Eveline stiffened at the all-too-familiar voice. "Speak of the devil." She turned, masking her distaste behind a carefully controlled smile as Tiffany approached her, feigning innocence. "Why didn't you pick me up today? I waited for you at the bus stop," Tiffany whined, standing before her with a pout. Eveline resisted the urge to roll her eyes. Tiffany had always latched onto her, using their friendship to climb Aspen's social ladder. Eveline had never realized how deep her deception ran, until it was too late. "I forgot to tell you," Eveline said smoothly. "My car broke down. I had to wait for another one to pick me up." Tiffany huffed. "You could have at least called. I had to take the bus." Eveline's lips twitched. "It must have been nostalgic for you. After all, you took the bus for years before we met." Tiffany's expression faltered. Suppressing her amusement, Eveline added, "Anyway, I have something to do before class. Go ahead without me." Before Tiffany could protest, Eveline walked away. She had no intention of playing the fool this time. Deep in thought, she rounded a corner, only to collide with a firm chest. She stumbled back, steadying herself as she looked up, and her breath hitched. Gabriel, the man who had once been her world, only to become her executioner. But this time, things would be different. This time, she would be the one in control. Eveline's eyes widened at the sight of the boy in front of her. It was Gabriel Winston, Aspen College's attractive and popular hunk. Gabriel was in his final year of a master's degree program and was about to graduate and join his family firm, if Eveline remembered correctly. "Watch where you are heading to." Her expression went cold as Gabriel's arrogant voice jolted her out of her daydream. Everyone at the college knew Eveline had feelings for Gabriel, but she never voiced them to him. Perhaps she was shy, despite the fact that they had known one another since they were children. "This also applies to you. You could have changed your route after seeing me," Eveline said with scorn, backing away from him. Eveline had vowed to confront anyone who disparaged her and shun those who ruined her life. Her audacity shocked Gabriel, but before he could respond, Eveline turned around and left, leaving him in the spacious foyer. What exactly did I see? Did Eveline scold Gabriel? A student walking by mumbled, "Whoa, I never thought Eveline would be so harsh," exclaimed the other student. "Isn't she cool?" another person commented. Countless murmurs emerged among the students as they observed the historic scene. Other students quickly flooded the Aspen forum with chatter as they inquired about Eveline's bravery. Some criticize her, while others condemn her bravery. Gabriel gazed around, taking in everyone's faces, before turning and walking to the west side of the building for class. "Gabriel, wait!" a voice called to him, and he turned to look at the person. "I apologize for Eveline's impolite behaviors. She doesn't typically behave in such a rude manner, so I'm uncertain about her current situation," Tiffany reasoned. His stunning features captured Tiffany's attention. Tiffany secretly loved Gabriel, and in order to win his heart, she needed to become close to his childhood friend, Eveline. Gabriel glanced at the girl with a blank expression. He hummed and walked away, barely acknowledging her comments, but that brief encounter brought a proud smile to her lips. Gabriel's inadequate verbal communication skills prevented him from engaging in a conversation with her. She turned and walked into the classroom, satisfied. Eveline heaved a sigh of relief as she ran towards the basin after forcing the restroom door open. During her talk with Gabriel, she realized she was holding her breath. It was surprising that she would be so cruel to the man she had committed her life to, but those events from her past would remind her of his cruelty and cause her to forget everything, including her love and devotion. She lost her affection for him the instant she saw him emotionless as she was pushed off the building. Gabriel, I used to love you wholeheartedly, but not anymore. I promise to treat you like no one else, no matter how many times we cross paths. Eveline stood there till she relaxed. Seeing the redness in her eyes, she couldn't help but smile. Throughout your friendship, you were gullible, and the person you loved cheated you. Why are you crying for him? Don't you feel lucky to have seen their actual faces before obtaining a second chance? She reminded herself. Eveline had always been kind and forgiving, but that changed when they took away her most valuable possession. Her fingers instinctively moved to caress her stomach. The fear of losing her child was enough to strengthen her heart and make her forget about the pain. Eveline exited the restroom with renewed determination and made her way to class. As soon as she entered, a tremendous cheer erupted throughout the space, surprising her immediately. Despite not understanding their brief conversation, Eveline chose to ignore it and take her seat. "What have you done, Eve? Why did you offend Gabriel?" Tiffany queried, anxious, as she approached Eveline's side. Eveline's stare was piercing the moment she noticed Tiffany in the seat next to her. If she had known what kind of girl she was, she would not have become friends with her in the first place. "It wasn't my fault in the first place, and would he not just disregard me if it was?" Eveline said. Eveline ignored her and fished the book from her backpack. Eveline's cold words toward Gabriel surprised Tiffany, and she started to wonder what had really happened. "However, you should not have addressed him rudely. How do you plan to earn his affection?" Tiffany inquired with worry. Eveline had always wanted to win Gabriel's heart, but now her indifference perplexed her. "I don't care what he thinks," she abruptly responded, leaving Tiffany stunned. Tiffany recalls Gabriel never listening to anything Eveline said, while she was the only one who attempted to acknowledge their relationship. He treated her like air, barely noticing her presence. Did she realize there was no chance Gabriel would love her? Her eyes shine with hope. Tiffany now has a method to pursue Gabriel thanks to her friend's surprising change in conduct. If she continues to mistreat Gabriel, he will despise her even more, Tiffany reasoned, a devious smirk creeping across her lips, which she hastily concealed. Tiffany's modest manner captured Eveline's attention, prompting her to abruptly stop her thoughts by slamming the book on the table. "Are you only going to talk about Gabriel? If so, please return to your seat because class is about to start." Eveline looked ahead, ignoring Tiffany's surprised expression. Eveline had never been so arrogant about Tiffany, but her reaction surprised her, and she returned to her seat, focusing her smug stare on her friend. Soon the lecture began, and Eveline returned to her studies. After her resurrection, Eveline chose to concentrate on her academic studies instead of following Gabriel. Eveline had tried every method to win Gabriel over in her former life, but no matter what happened, she was always the target of his fury. However, this was no longer her objective. Her desire was to fully embrace life and transform into the individual she had always aspired to be. "I wasted my youth on these useless people, but no longer." Eveline reminded herself of her life's mission while remaining focused on the class. The bell rang, signaling the end of class, and Gabriel quickly picked up his backpack and walked out of the classroom. "Gabby, wait!" Gabriel was abruptly stopped by a voice, and he turned to see Stefan, his only friend, approaching him. "What is the problem?" "I heard Eveline chastise you. Has she changed her mind?" Stefan smiled as he tried to pull Gabriel's leg away. Eveline, Stefan, and Gabriel's fathers were buddies. Thus their children bonded naturally. Stefan believed Eveline to be his sister, and Gabriel was a love interest she had been pursuing since she had known him. Eveline developed strong affections for Gabriel, but his friend ignored her provocative conduct and treated her indifferently. Despite her best efforts, Gabriel rejected her admiration and continued to treat her like any other girl at the university. Eveline, a year younger than them, had been obsessed with Gabriel since she was a child. She thought of Stefan as a brother, but Gabriel was just Gabby to her. She was the center of their attention, yet her sole focus was on Gabriel. Gabriel's expression darkened as his comments reminded him of the unresolved event that was spinning in his mind. Eveline's words resonated in his eyes, and the way she stared at him with contempt fueled his rage, leading him to snatch Stefan's hand away. Gabriel didn't intend to say anything and continued walking downstairs, but as soon as he reached the first level, his eyes caught sight of Eveline going out of her classroom, and his movements came to a standstill. He wanted to take a step forward, but when he saw Tiffany, he halted and tailed after her, eventually abandoning his goal. Gabriel went away, but Tiffany was fascinated by his presence and smirked secretly. "Why do I feel you are ignoring me?" Eveline winced at Tiffany's touch and quickly moved away. It brought back memories of Tiffany pushing her off the balcony, which ultimately led to her death. It was as if she sensed a trigger with her fingertips. "Will you please stop jumping on me?" Eveline snapped, leaving Tiffany stunned by her harshness once more. She wasn't sure what was wrong with Eveline, but the way Eveline disliked her touch made her wonder if she had done anything to merit such treatment. Eveline, on the other hand, realized she had overreacted and quickly apologized. I am sorry. I did not mean to raise my voice at you, but please stop being so pushy." "It makes me uncomfortable," Eveline said with a false smile, devastating Tiffany with her gorgeous but harsh statements. She understood that in order to avoid Tiffany, she needed to be honest with her. Tiffany blinked in confusion and bobbled her head. Something had changed. Eveline was never so harsh with her. She was always polite. What changed within her to cause her to act in this way? Eveline faked a grin as she looked at Tiffany's expressionless face. "Are you going to keep staring, or do you want something from me?" she asked in the same indifferent tone. Tiffany had become extremely gluttonous, constantly begging for favors with a sorrowful grin. However, she was no longer naive, and falling for her deception was not an option. Tiffany faked a smile as she snapped out of her daze. She had no idea how to deal with this issue, but she was convinced that her tears would melt Eveline's heart. "There's nothing. I only want to be with you. If you don't want—" Tiffany intended to make a guilt trip, but Eveline's comment caught her off guard. "I do not want to, so please excuse me," Eveline said, walking away and leaving Tiffany behind. When she heard the student speak behind her back, her countenance changed from surprise to rage, and she walked out without paying them any attention. Eveline marched out of the building, ignoring everyone's expressions. She was a popular student, not because she was gorgeous or the daughter of the owner, but because she excelled academically. Moreover, she stood out as the sole female who cultivated a close relationship with the two most attractive men at the college. Eveline didn't mind being the center of attention back then, but she'd rather disappear and live a normal life now. "Hello, little sister." Eveline flinched as Stefan unexpectedly stepped in front of her. Stefan had a habit of causing her heart palpitations. "Why has everyone been scaring me since morning?" Eveline asked, trying to calm her pulse. Eveline snapped while trying to ease her pulse. Ever since her encounter with Tiffany and Gabriel earlier, she felt like her life had been nothing but a pendulum, swaying back and forth. "What's up with this gloominess? And by the way, where are you heading?" Stefan asked, puzzled by Eveline's internal monologue. Stefan inquired, perplexed by Eveline's internal monologue. "Do you still feel offended by Gabriel?" Stefan laughed heartily, unable to think Eveline, who had been constantly harassing Gabriel, would ever be unhappy with him. Eveline scoffed as she looked at Stefan, who appeared amused by her situation. It's not surprising that he found it difficult to trust anyone. "Would you like me to cease making fun of you? Or do you wish for me to strike you in the face?" Eveline warned, stealing Stefan's smile immediately. What did you say?" Stefan stammered, still unable to understand Eveline's words. "You heard the same thing," Eveline casually said. "Are you okay, Eve? Why do you feel like you banged your head so hard when we collided?" Stefan reached out to examine her, but she jerked his hand away. "Nothing is wrong with me. I am fine," she replied, ignoring his concerns. Stefan sighed with relief, yet his brow wrinkled. "So why are you acting like that? Did something happen to make you upset with Gabriel? Or did you finally accept that he will never fall in love with you?" Stefan put his hand over Eveline's shoulder casually, and they continued their stroll. Eveline was like Stefan's younger sister, and she enjoyed discussing her difficulties with him. When he confronted Eveline about her feelings for Gabriel, he advised her to give up. And she finally understood why. Look, you're spacing out once more. I'm sure you're not feeling well. Else you wouldn't be talking to yourself. So please tell me what's wrong and why you're furious with Gabriel. Who is upset with whom? A familiar voice inquired, capturing Stefan and Eveline's attention. Gabriel looked at the two before fixing his eyes on Eveline. I asked you something. Who is upset with whom? Gabriel had resolved to ignore everything, but when he saw Stefan and Eveline together, he couldn't resist following them. Eveline's gaze hardened as she stared at Gabriel with equal intensity and said, Were you eavesdropping on us? Stefan gave Eveline a scared expression. Stefan was taken aback by Eveline's cold response to Gabriel. Despite his surprise, Gabriel quickly hid his feelings and moved toward Eveline. What if I was? He inquired, keeping his gaze fixed on her. While Eveline was alarmed by their proximity, she refused to leave. She'd always been obedient to Gabriel and tolerated his arrogance in the name of so-called love. She hoped that one day he would recognize her affection and warm his heart. But that never occurred. Instead, he ended up watching her fall from the balcony, without showing any sympathy. Have you forgotten your manners? Gabriel's lips twitched at her attitude, but he remained calm. He wondered what he had done to earn Eveline's impolite manner. I was not eavesdropping. I just wanted to talk to Stefan, who happened to be with you at the time. Gabriel lied, clearly intimidated by her gaze. Stefan unexpectedly remarked, But you said you wanted to be alone, leaving Gabriel speechless. His jaw clenched as he shot a seething glare at Stefan. He expected his friend to comply, but instead exposed him. Stupid guy. Anyway, Brother Stefan is yours, Eveline remarked, taking a step back and turning to leave. Gabriel watched her receding form, his heart torn. Something about Eveline struck him as unusual, but he couldn't figure out what. So why were you looking for me? Stefan inquired, taking a step closer to Gabriel, who simply shot him a glare and walked away. Stefan inquired, taking a step closer to Gabriel, who simply shot him a glare and walked away. Eveline spent the remainder of the day avoiding Tiffany and concentrating on class. When it was time to depart, Eveline exited the classroom ahead of Tiffany and walked directly to her car. Tiffany, however, hailed Eveline from behind before she could enter. Eveline tightened her grasp on the handle and turned to face Tiffany, who was sprinting behind her before tripping and falling to the ground with a thump. Eveline's eyes clouded as she recognized what Tiffany had done, but to avoid suspicion, she raced to her side and helped her stand. Ah, it hurts, Tiffany exclaimed, stumbling about. Eveline scoffed mentally as she examined her strategy. She had obviously noticed that there was no stone Tiffany might trip on. She staged an act to get a ride home. Eve, could you just take me home? With this agony, I don't think I'll be able to travel by bus. There you go. Aren't you thinking we should first consult a doctor? What if the sprain is too severe? Eveline inquired, surprising Tiffany on the spot, and she stuttered through her words. No, I don't think I should see a doctor. Just take me home, please. Eveline realized Tiffany was lying, but she didn't dwell on it too long before agreeing to take her home. Tiffany helped herself into the car as Eveline watched and fumed before walking to the other side of the vehicle and getting in. Tiffany quickly exited the premises in her car, having obtained what she desired. Eveline glanced at Tiffany from the side, but her focus shifted to her phone. She wondered how her so-called buddy had earned her trust, to the point where she never doubted her. Perhaps she was overly friendly, allowing her to play with her emotions until the end. Eveline couldn't help but mock her misfortune. You seem perfectly fine. Eveline's words surprised Tiffany, causing her to smile awkwardly. She hurriedly slid the phone into her pocket and turned to face Eveline. Yes, I believe so. Look, I can move my leg too. Tiffany rotated her ankle to demonstrate to Eveline the improvement. So, shall I drop you off here? I see you're okay to go on your own now. Tiffany's smile faded as she heard Eveline's comments, but she quickly smiled, breaking her concentration. I'm kidding. I am not heartless enough to leave my friend alone, especially after you hurt your ankle. Eveline forced a smile, perplexing Tiffany with how rapidly her expressions went from chilly to chirpy. Tiffany gave an uneasy smile and nodded her head in approval. Ha ha, yes. Tiffany felt nervous in front of Eveline. The girl, who always listened to her and followed her around like a lost dog, made Tiffany nervous. Tiffany remembers meeting Eveline and how quickly she earned her trust, eventually being her lone friend and well-wisher. But now she was questioning whether she hadn't gotten to know Eveline more intimately. "Leo, please pull over," Eveline instructed, jolting Tiffany out of her daydream and bringing the automobile to a halt. "We have arrived," Eveline remarked with a smile. Tiffany made a habit of requesting Eveline to pull over away from her home. Tiffany did not want Eveline to witness how bad her life was with her inebriated father or how impoverished she was, not because she couldn't get her there. Tiffany smiled and turned to exit the vehicle, but Eveline stopped her. "Tiffany, what is it that you talked about with Gabriel?" Tiffany glanced at Eveline with a dubious gaze and mumbled, "What did I say?" She inquired, pretending ignorance, even though it was clear that she understood what Eveline was saying. Eveline surprised Gabriel this morning, but when she saw Tiffany rush to him, she paused and attempted to see through her lie, all the while continuing to brainwash Gabriel. "I hope you did not badmouth me." Eveline returned home after Tiffany denied gaslighting her in front of Gabriel. Despite her lack of self-confidence, she felt forced to warn her friend that she was keeping an eye on her and everything she attempted to accomplish behind her back. Eveline tried to keep Tiffany on her toes and dissuade her from using her crafty ways to wreck her life, but she didn't mind if Tiffany got suspicious of her comment. "Young miss, your orange juice." Susan's voice jolted Eveline out of her trance, causing her to sit up. Eveline realized she still hadn't changed, but the exhaustion from the day didn't seem to go away. "Young miss, are you confident that there is nothing wrong with you? Should I consult a doctor, in your opinion?" Susan maintained a careful eye on Eveline, who couldn't stop inquiring. Uncertainty flashed through her eyes as she turned to face the lady. After her mother's death, Susan took on the role of Eveline's nanny, and her familiarity with Eveline's actions enabled her to quickly identify her behavior. She was now certain that there was indeed a problem with Eveline. She questioned whether Susan hadn't noticed something was wrong. Staring at the lady, she soon realized how much she missed her during those lonely times. Susan had cared for her since she was a child, listening to her whine and offering guidance as a mother would. But everything changed when she married Gabriel. Susan quit her job and departed without a word. Susan left wondering where she had gone and why she had never once contacted her. Taking a deep breath, Eveline discarded all of her concerns and, smiling in response, said, "Susan, I'm fine. I never lied when I said I was afraid of a nightmare," she insists. Eveline didn't want others to be suspicious of her, so she sought to guarantee that everything was okay and that she could carry on with her life as usual. Once Susan was convinced that Eveline was fine, she didn't pursue the topic further and quickly left the room after placing the juice. Eveline took off her clothes and stood under the shower, allowing the cool water to pour from her naked body. Her heart clenched with each passing second, and recollections of her past life blurred her vision. Eveline made every attempt to prove her innocence after marrying Gabriel. But despite her efforts, he never trusted her. He conveyed the impression that he had already concluded that she was the one who had exploited him to gain entry into his life. However, he remained unaware that evening that she had also received drugs. Too quick to pass judgment on those who had taken advantage of her generosity, Eveline understood that no one could have foretold her death and slammed her fist angrily on the wall. The murder of her friend and husband was an even more terrifying nightmare. But now that she had come back to atone for her mistake, she would never allow anyone to step on her again. Eveline hurriedly bathed, dressed, and exited the bathroom. She then drank the drink Susan had given her earlier and took a nap. Eveline had encountered incidents that significantly changed her life. She took precautions to prevent experiencing the same situation that would lead to someone taking advantage of her. With that thought, she closed her eyes and allowed sleep to take over her drained mind. After a disappointing day, Gabriel went back home. But before he could reach his room, his mother, Belle, stopped him. "You are home." Not only was Belle Winston the matriarch of the Winston family, but she also played a key role in founding the Winston Group. Besides being a doting wife, she also gave her all to raising her kids, Gabriel and Daniel. Gabriel stopped abruptly upon hearing his mother's voice and glanced at her, who gestured for him to approach. Gabriel didn't want to chat, but he had to comply with his mother's request and join her on the couch. "I thought you were supposed to go teach Eveline at the Miller house," Belle said to me. Gabriel's eyes grew chilly as he remembered Richard ordering him to tutor Eveline per her request. He didn't voice his rejection at the time, but now he regrets not doing so. "Mom, she can pay any tutor for her academics, so why should I go teach her?" Gabriel stated his reluctance to visit Eveline. Gabriel expressed his reluctance to see Eveline due to the unpleasantness she had caused him. "Yes, she can. But she asked Richard to persuade you," Belle explained. "And you understand that your father cannot refuse her request, so you must go and instruct her no matter what you say." Gabriel frowned, wondering why Belle would listen to him when Eveline had his parents completely under control. Eveline was the child of her best friend, Erna, who died from an incurable disease, leaving Eveline under their care. Since then, Belle has raised and treasured her like her own kid. "What are you waiting for? Get changed. I don't want my daughter to miss her academics." Belle softly nudged Gabriel away, and he reluctantly stood up to leave. Eveline was sound asleep when the nightmare of her death resurfaced again. Tiffany shoving her off the balcony, and Gabriel's empty expression were the last things she thought about, keeping her subconsciously awake and forcing her to lose her sleep. She jolted up to sit on the bed, gasping for air and slowly taking in the surroundings. Eveline thought everything around her was a mirage, and she had returned to her deathbed. Fortunately, it was only a dream, and nothing had actually altered. Eveline was deep in thought when she heard a knock on the door and saw Susan enter with some news. Susan said, "Young miss, young Master Gabriel is waiting for you downstairs," which confused Eveline. Eveline gasped as she remembered her request to Richard. When Eveline expressed a desire to have Gabriel tutor her in her studies, Richard agreed immediately. She believed that this would allow her to better understand Gabriel. Tiffany, another intruder, interrupted her wish by pleading with her to let her join them because she was also having trouble understanding some of the chapters. Eveline's face reddened as she remembered how Tiffany overshadowed her and began approaching Gabriel. "How did I not recognize her scheme back then?" she scoffed, partially attributing the conspiracy to herself. "I apologize for causing you any inconvenience, son, but as you are well aware, Eveline ignored my advice to find another tutor." Jonathan stated apologetically, "I had no idea she would already ask Richard about this," he added. "It is okay, Uncle. It would be more efficient if I dedicated this hour to teaching Eve, as I don't have any other obligations." Jonathan had been admiring Gabriel since he was a child. He was not only considerate, but also thoughtful to Eveline, who was continually causing him problems. Susan soon joined the two and informed Gabriel that they were waiting for Eveline in their study room. Gabriel promptly excused himself and entered the study, where he found Eveline waiting for him. Gabriel has visited the Miller house before. He spent the majority of his childhood here with Stefan and Eveline. However, today he found it unusual to meet Eveline alone in the room. When Gabriel approached Eveline, she stopped him and said, "I am sorry for the trouble, but you do not have to come here to teach me." Gabriel glared and scoffed in surprise when he heard Eveline's statements. "So, why did you ask my father to convince me to teach you?" he queried with a slightly angry tone. "It was a mistake, and I do not wish to learn anything from you. Therefore, you are under no obligation to come here." Eveline's caustic statements infuriated Gabriel even more. He couldn't understand why Eveline was being rude to him, especially when she was the one who forced him to come here. Gabriel took a deep breath, his anger building, but he managed to suppress it before asking, "Have I offended you in any way?" "You've been treating me badly since the morning." Gabriel expressed what was on his mind. Eveline had never been so antagonistic to him before, but her recent actions had made him wonder whether he had done something wrong to deserve such treatment. "Don't you remember?" Eveline mocked, her eyes going gloomy. Gabriel remained motionless, his mind struggling to understand what she had said. Although it was obvious to him, the way she looked at him just now made his stomach turn. He was concerned that she may tumble earlier, but his generosity was misconstrued. "Can you just tell me what I did wrong?" Gabriel crossed his hands. "Was warning you a wrong intention?" He fixed his eyes on her, waiting anxiously for an answer. Eveline couldn't believe Gabriel would be interested in her response, especially since he never intended to wait. He always thought she was a foolish girl and blamed her for everything that happened. All of his deeds throughout her prior existence demonstrated how ruthless he was. Eveline's blood curdled with wrath as the feeling of betrayal rushed over her, regretting her love for him to the point of losing her self-esteem. However, she was unable to express her feelings or allow him to mock her. Eveline took a deep breath, disregarded all thoughts, and returned his stare with the same steely eyes. "Listen, Gabriel, I realize that you initially did not want to come and tutor me. I compelled you to come here after asking Uncle Richard about it. But now, I've realized my mistake, and I no longer want to learn anything from you," Eveline stated simply, leaving Gabriel suspicious. He had never adapted to Eveline's coldness, but today he felt like someone she detested. Is she serious right now? He wondered. Eveline, on the other hand, saw a shift in his gaze. Was it the contemplation she saw in those eyes, or was he finding a way to laugh at her? She was unable to express her feelings, yet she could not imagine sharing the same space with him. "So, there's no need for you to come here," she said, leaving Gabriel stunned. Eveline's words struck like a knife, piercing his heart with a cruel blow. "I have already lost my face due to my years-long crush on you, but I no longer want to associate with you in any way." Gabriel clenched his jaw in wrath at the sound of her angry remarks and walked away solemnly. "Scoff, does he think his anger still bothers me?" Eveline muttered, ignoring his exit, and turned to return to her room. Jonathan remained seated downstairs but rose up when he saw Gabriel walk back down. He intended to ask Gabriel where he was going, but he stopped when Gabriel walked away without looking back. Why did he leave like that? He wondered. Jonathan may not be outraged, but Gabriel's departure shouted anger. His gaze immediately focused on the first floor, where he observed Eveline walking the corridor and entering her room. "Did they fight?" Jonathan mumbled a statement that didn't align well with his understanding, as it hadn't happened often. However, given the circumstances, he couldn't help but wonder if they had indeed engaged in an argument. Gabriel got into his car and drove away from the mansion's gates. He got angry and wished to scold Eveline for her bluntness, but he couldn't since he felt helpless at the thought of her being disrespectful to him in the first place. It had never happened before, so it felt strange to suddenly see the change in her heart for him. But then he didn't expect it. Gabriel continued to speed up, his mind racing over her words. "You don't need to come here," she said, her anger intensifying. "I was mistaken for crushing on you, and now I don't want to associate with you anymore." "Ah!" Gabriel slammed the brakes and jerked the vehicle to the side of the road. He had never been so agitated, but the way she ended their relationship enraged him. What is her opinion of herself? Is she perceived as a leader who has the authority to say anything she wants, or as a princess who has the ability to manipulate everyone around her? Gabriel let out a frustrated groan and smacked his fist on the steering wheel. He couldn't tell what hurt him more, her rejection or the hatred in her eyes. Helpless, he dropped his head against the steering wheel, feeling a weird sensation creeping into his heart. The restlessness continues to increase. Gabriel never objected to Eveline's adoration. He could feel his heart skip a beat, because Eveline's adoration was so evident. But he never tried to acknowledge it. She was a young girl, and he believed it was a silly idea, so he never once tried to admit that she had a crush on him. Despite knowing that she would soon leave him and that these fleeting feelings would not last forever, he gradually grew accustomed to her reflex. Even though Gabriel will never accept it, he appreciated that she did not treat him like her brother because he does not intend to have a sister, especially not one with whom he practically grew up. Still, he hesitated a little as he started to believe that Eveline's activities were inappropriate and that they should simply maintain their relationship. Gabriel sneered and stared out the window, his eyes filled with hate. "I am glad she realized there's nothing we can have together." Even though Gabriel had known Eveline since childhood, he did not truly believe in her. She never truly committed herself to anything in her life. She may have stated that she doesn't want to do anything with him. But how long will that last? After another minute, Gabriel finally calmed enough to start his car and drive away. Meanwhile, Eveline was pleased with the results. She couldn't help but be satisfied with Gabriel's expression. She had spent her entire life chasing him for his attention, forsaking her dignity. But today she was able to see the expression of dejection in his eyes, which gave her a sense of satisfaction. Let's not worry about him anymore, she admonished herself and got out of bed. Eveline chose to study and was about to proceed to the study table when a knock on the door stopped her in her tracks, and she saw her father enter. Eveline didn't expect Jonathan to show up here straight away because she assumed he would be preoccupied with his work. However, now that he has arrived, she greets him with a smile. I expected Gabriel would tutor you. However, the boy stormed out. Is everything fine between the two of you? He inquired, his face displaying a hint of doubt. Jonathan was aware that Eveline disliked initiating conflicts, but he couldn't help but question why Gabriel would go when there was no issue between them. Dad, I believe I won't need Gabriel's assistance any longer. Eveline remarked, I am fine studying myself. Jonathan was puzzled. But didn't you pester Richard to persuade Gabriel to tutor you? He inquired, his tone betraying surprise. Eveline had essentially sugar-coated Richard into hiring Gabriel as her academic coach, and now she is abruptly removing him from his responsibilities. She was aware that her decision was premature, but she needed to act severely to keep Gabriel at a remove. Dad, I've come to the realization that you were correct when you suggested not to worry about Gabriel, as he already has a significant workload. Furthermore, I think it would be beneficial to follow your recommendation and hire a different tutor, Eveline said, recalling his past advice. Jonathan struggled to understand Eveline's quick turn in attitude, but he decided it was best to have a different tutor rather than bother Gabriel with everything. So, who do you want to hire? Do you have somebody in mind? He asked, and Eveline went ahead and provided Jonathan the names of other professors who may help her. Gabriel arrived home earlier than expected, but did not greet anyone and went straight to his room. When he walked in, his eyes darkened as he watched his brother lie comfortably on his tidy bed, reading a book. How many times have I told you, Daniel, to keep your shoes off my bed? You're messing with my bedsheet. Gabriel expressed his dissatisfaction. He preferred that his stuff remained intact and that no one misplaced it. When did you begin reading romance novels, brother? Daniel inquired about his brother's quick shift in tastes. Gabriel marched to the bed and pulled the book from his grasp. Don't you realize that peeking into people's personal belongings is impolite? Where are your manners, Daniel? Gabriel stared at his brother before returning the book to his shelves. Gabriel Winston embodied the archetypal younger brother, relishing in causing trouble for his sibling. Gabriel Winston was consistently bothersome, or as Gabriel described it, a nuisance. Daniel was much funnier and more carefree than his older brother, who was quiet and composed. Daniel knew Gabriel would never detest him, no matter how many reprimands he received. He was the type of brother who liked to discipline his brothers while also loving them wholeheartedly. Daniel jumped off the bed and approached his irate brother. He realized Gabriel wasn't in a positive mood, which prompted him to tease him. Do not tell me, brother, that you have finally found the one melting your stone-like heart. Daniel dreamily blinked, irritating Gabriel even more with his dumb remark. Gabriel didn't want to remember the day Eveline gave him that book for his birthday. She had always been respectful of his tastes, but this year for his birthday, she surprised him with a book. A love novel, no less. Gabriel enjoyed reading and was well-versed in academics, but this time she chose a book to show her affections for him. However, she was unaware that he already understood her emotions and was taken aback by her gift. However, Gabriel glared at his brother like an eagle at its prey. Gabriel Winston, you should remain silent if you want your father to learn about your midterm results. Daniel dropped his act, practically pleading with his brother as his eyes widened in fear. Brother, please don't tell Dad about it. He's going to take my allowance away every month. Even though Belle and Richard's family was well known in Country S, they raised their sons with extreme strictness. They were aware of the importance of perseverance and the years it took them to reach their current position. Gabriel and Daniel never had an inflated sense of self-worth and instead showed respect for their parents. But the one thing that worries them is that their parents are picky about their academic performance. Being one of the highest shareholders of Aspen College, Richard wanted both his sons to excel in their studies. Despite not being careless with his studies, Daniel received a slightly lower score than anticipated, and Gabriel was now retaliating against him for his taunting. Gabriel shot him a fierce look that made him immediately stop acting. Tell me now what brought you here. Gabriel changed the subject and walked back towards the couch before tossing his bag aside and taking the seat. A sudden thought struck Daniel. Are you and Eveline not on good terms? And he hurried to Gabriel's side. Are they true? Did you really fight with her? Daniel, a first-year student at Aspen Colleges, became aware of the news that some other students had shared on the forum. Along with the remarks, the forum circulated a few images of Eveline and Gabriel exchanging glaring looks. Gabriel grabbed the phone out of Daniel's grasp, erased the web page, and then shoved it back in his hand. If you have nothing further to say, kindly depart. I do not feel like talking to anyone right now, Gabriel said, leaning back on the couch and shutting his eyes. Daniel narrowed his eyes, studying every curve of Gabriel's face with suspicion. It was obvious that there was a problem between them based on his seeming irritation. Shh. Now, I am confident that both of you did indeed fight. But why? Daniel furrowed his brow and rubbed his chin. Daniel swallowed, erasing the Sherlock Holmes expression from his face as Gabriel glared at him. Ha ha ha, my only concern was for you, brother. Why not tell Mom and Dad? We grew up together. I am sure they will scold you for hurting their precious daughter, Eveline, Daniel stated, comfortably adjusting himself on the couch. Eveline and Daniel forged a strong friendship, and she also helped Daniel secure acceptance into the course of his choice. With Eveline, he was able to fulfill his lifelong desire for a sister. But after reading the post on the forum, he worried that things might change. Why are you so worried about whether or not we get along? Gabriel asked, suddenly becoming more interested in Daniel's explanation about Eveline than in himself. I understand that Eveline wouldn't become upset without a reason. Gabriel arched his brow in surprise at Daniel's response. And what makes you think that I am at fault? This time he asked me to get up and sit down. Sensing the tension in his brother's demeanor, Daniel sat back slowly. That is because you always seem distant from her, and I fear that if you do not change, I will no longer have a sister like her. Gabriel twitched his lips in irritation and gritted, Daniel Winston, why would you want a sister when you have me? Do you not like me? Previously, Gabriel would have been unaffected if his brother or parents referred to Eveline as their sister. But things changed when he found out that she was in love with him, and now he finds the word sister bothersome. Daniel, on the other hand, winced at Gabriel's outburst and crept downstairs from the couch. I like you, brother, but my favorite person is my sister Eveline. He claimed to have fled his room as if he were a mouse running for its life. Gabriel snorted, disappointed that Daniel preferred Eveline to be his sister rather than his brother. Gabriel took a moment to push aside his irksome attitude and focus on his studies. As a final-year student, Gabriel had a ton of assignments and projects that required more of his time than teaching Eveline. Thus, he set everything aside, took a seat in front of the study table, and began working on his homework. A certain someone was growing agitated because the unexpected turn of events had caught her off guard, while Gabriel and Eveline were preoccupied with their respective studies. Tiffany struggled to remove Eveline's words from her mind, and they provided her with some insight into why Eveline had said them. Did she get suspicious of me? Tiffany muttered, contemplating Eveline's last impression of her before she drove off. Tiffany became concerned that her plan might not succeed because it seemed more like a casual remark than a convincing one. Will you continue to stand there? Where is my food, goddammit? Her father, who was sitting behind her, interrupted Tiffany's thoughts with his drunken yelling. Rolling her eyes, she angrily slammed the cloth on the kitchen island before turning to confront Jacob, who was complaining incoherently on the couch. Stop being such a whiner, you poor drunk. I am not here to listen to your constant crying. Just be quiet and wait for her to come make you dinner. Tiffany yelled angrily at her father, who was too far away to understand her. She had lived her entire life in this manner from birth. Her father would gamble or drink himself to insanity, using the money her mother earned from her job. Not a single day went by that someone knocked on their door requesting money, which Jacob would take. The only breadwinner in her household was her mother. However, she was baffled as to why she had let go of her pathetic husband, who served only as a burden for them. Ignoring his tirade, Tiffany brought her food and proceeded to her room. Their residence was a single-story home. She occupied a room, while her parents took up residence in the living hall. Taking care of her drunken father every day was a drain. Tiffany, however, was aware that her mother would never want her to simply forget about him. Watching her mother struggle was heartbreaking, but as a result, she worked hard in school and received a scholarship to attend Aspen. She aspired to provide them with a better life, and in order to do so, she needed to establish connections. Her first and only victim was Eveline. "Tiffany, I'm back." A voice interrupted her reverie, and she spun to see the door to her rundown room open. Tiffany gawked at her mother and said, "Mom, you are late." Susan, wearing an apologetic expression, entered the room and gave her a hug. "I am sorry. I had to ensure that the young lady had finished her dinner, as she had been studying for hours," Susan reasoned before pulling away. "Does your young miss require assurance regarding her errands?" Tiffany frowned in exasperation, recalling her mother's preference to gaze at her young miss instead of her own child. "I am sorry. It will not happen again." Susan apologized once again before darting her gaze at the bowl of noodles Tiffany was eating. "Why are you eating this? Didn't you read my note?" Susan asked with furrowed brows. Susan would always make sure that Tiffany had something to eat when she got home from college, but it upset her to watch her consume these unhealthy noodles. "I did read your note, but your useless husband finished the food you prepared." The emotionlessness in Tiffany's voice made Susan realize what had transpired. Dropping her shoulders in defeat, Susan sighed. "Let me make you something healthy to eat," Susan said, and she turned to go. "Why are you putting up with him, Mom? Can't you just cut ties with him?" Tiffany's words stopped Susan, causing her to turn around and smile sadly. "Even though sharing your life with someone you love is unbearable, it is difficult to let them go." Tiffany's eyes darkened as she watched her mother leave. "Scoff. What good is all this love if he can't even make your life happy?" Tiffany muttered, then resumed her meal. Tiffany mumbled under her breath and returned to her meal. Eveline did indeed go to sleep more quickly than she had anticipated after studying late into the evening, but those nightmares woke her up. She has been tossing and turning ever since, unable to fall back asleep. Eveline was staring at the ceiling without making any movement when her alarm went off. She flinched and slackly patted it shut before hauling her weary body up onto the bed. Eveline suffered from insomnia, which made it difficult for her to fall asleep. Eveline's husband, who kept her awake until late at night, was the primary cause of her insomnia. "Let us get ready, Eveline." With that chant, she pushed herself off the bed and made her way to the restroom. Eveline reached Aspen College using the same route where Tiffany would wait for her, but today she didn't see her standing at the stop as usual. Maybe her words from yesterday indeed alerted her, and she finally gave up the idea of using her as a ladder for success. Before long, Eveline noticed Gabriel's vehicle pulling up to the college entrance and stopping beside hers. But her eyebrows knitted at the one that leaped out. Tiffany got out of the car first, followed by Gabriel, and as soon as they locked eyes, her so-called friend muttered something to him and hurried over to be by her side. Eveline, who was staring at Gabriel, gave herself a mental snicker before turning to face Tiffany, who had by now moved to stand beside her. "I am sure you are wondering how Gabriel and I arrived together." Tiffany's annoying voice made Eveline cringe inwardly, but she continued to keep on smiling and said, "Because you wish to be near him more." Tiffany's smile faltered and her eyes narrowed at her remark. "What did you say?" she asked again, making sure she understood what Eveline meant to say. As soon as Eveline realized what she had said in jest, she quickly corrected herself. "Because you are trying to bring us closer, remember?" she chirped, maintaining the same forceful smile. If Eveline recalled it, Tiffany had offered her help to bring her and Gabriel closer. Eveline did not know that under an amiable exterior, she was putting her trust in a snake that would gradually ruin her life when she first revealed her feelings to Tiffany. She believed she could make Gabriel fall in love with her with Tiffany's assistance. But what she does not realize is that Tiffany is gradually gaining Gabriel's trust, carving out a place in his heart for herself, and manipulating him to manipulate their relationship. Tiffany's expression softened, and she sighed before smiling once more. "Yes, you are right. How can I forget that?" Even though Tiffany was grinning, Eveline despised her because of the sinister glint in her laugh. Eveline suddenly stopped smiling and turned to head towards the building, with Tiffany walking by her side. Tiffany relaxed and sighed as she watched Eveline come to terms with her lie. If only she knew how she purposely skipped her bus to the college and shamelessly waited for Gabriel's car for help, Eveline would have doubted her. Eve, you are such a fool. Do you really think that letting you have the most popular guy in our college is a sign of my kindness? Huh. So what are your plans for helping me? Eveline asked, observing Tiffany walking in silence. You might have strategies or methods for bringing us together if you came with Gabriel, after all. Can you elaborate with me? Eveline asked, startling Tiffany out of her thoughts. Her speech trailed off as her mind froze. I was. It's okay. You don't have to tell me right now. Think about it before the class ends. Eveline cut Tiffany's words, darting her gaze ahead as they finally reached the classroom. Tiffany awkwardly smiled, but Eveline's words made her eyes wary as they made their way into the classroom. Eveline chose to sit by herself as usual, which caused many people to wonder if Tiffany and Eveline were really best friends. What's wrong? How come you are not seated next to her? Gracie, one of the students, inquired after Tiffany sat with her. She was aware that Tiffany and Eveline were inseparable, making Tiffany one of the class's most pertinent students. She began to attract attention by befriending students who looked up to Eveline because of her bond with Eveline. However, Eveline was unaware that Tiffany had brainwashed some students into feeling sympathy for her by lying to them about the nature of their relationship. Eveline was depicted by her as an evil girl who aspired to be a rebel due to her social standing. Her kind demeanor was merely an attempt to make her seem relevant. While some of them thought Eveline would truly have such a personality, others did not share their views. Although the situation was evenly balanced, Tiffany was adamant about damaging Eveline's reputation as a nice girl to reduce her appeal to the students. Therefore, Tiffany seized the opportunity to expose Eveline to the full college as soon as Eveline told her about Gabriel by posting the information on the Aspen College forum page. She posted a caption with Eveline's photo and Gabriel mentioning her childhood crush using a fictitious ID that she had used to log in. When Eveline confronted Tiffany, she lied and claimed that one of the students had overheard them talking and had taken advantage of the conversation, with Eveline, who easily believed her. But following that day, Gabriel began to display more distance from Eveline's reaction. I think she has been upset with me since Gabriel and I are becoming closer. You know how devoted she is to him, Gracie said, her mouth hanging open in disbelief at Tiffany's statement. But aren't you her best friend? Then why should she get upset? Gracie asked, still finding it hard to believe Tiffany's remark over Eveline's possessive nature towards Gabriel. Gracie was one of the students who saw Eveline and Gabriel interact yesterday, and she looked offended by his remark. Then how is it that she says Eveline is possessive of Gabriel? You do not really believe me? Observing the suspicious twinkle in Gracie's eyes, Tiffany spoke. Gracie was taken aback by Tiffany's claim, and she scoffed, It's hard to believe that Eveline is possessive of Gabriel after whatever happened yesterday. She doesn't seem interested in him anymore. Tiffany's face dropped hearing Gracie's remark. It was then she recalled how Eveline repulsed to Gabriel's advice and blamed him for colliding with her. That's an act to get his sympathy. She blurred out of spite, but soon masked her emotions, putting on an innocent look. An act? Gracie muttered, casting her a bewildered glance. Yeah, an attempt to regain Gabriel's trust, which she had lost due to the post in which she revealed her infatuation with him, Tiffany said, with a convincing tone that made Gracie ponder her words. I will reveal something to you that nobody else is aware of, Tiffany muttered, beckoning Gracie to approach while brainwashing her against Eveline with her mumbling. No way, Gracie exclaimed, finding it difficult to accept Tiffany's statement. She threatened you to help her win Gabriel in exchange for your respect. Please don't tell anyone, or else Eveline will not spare me, Tiffany begged Gracie. Gracie was one of the top 10 students in terms of academic excellence. She had always attempted to outperform Eveline, but she was never able to do so, and she would consistently rank in second place on the chart. She eventually accepted that Eveline was, in fact, an excellent student and a nice girl who had once assisted her. However, after speaking with Tiffany, her feelings about Eveline started to waver. Tiffany, however, grinned at Gracie's solemn expression. She skillfully managed to manipulate another student against Eveline. Eveline was the most popular student at Aspen, not because she was Jonathan Miller's daughter, but rather because of her warm disposition toward everyone. She attracted a lot of followers with her smile and was always willing to lend a helping hand to students who needed it. During these 3 years, a lot of students started to view her as an inspiration. On the other hand, not many people disliked her, and Gracie was one among them. She had always competed with Eveline to secure the top position, but would always end up being second. Gracie was a sweet, quiet girl who preferred to keep to herself, but she did occasionally let her guard down around Eveline because Eveline had once assisted her. But after what Tiffany said, she knew she had managed to gain another supporter in her league. The class soon began, and everyone engrossed themselves in gaining knowledge. During the lunch break, Eveline excused herself and headed toward the staff section to meet Professor Beckham, whom she suggested Jonathan seek coaching from. "Professor, may I come in?" Knocking on the door, said Eveline. "Yes, Miss Miller, please come in," the man in his late 50s said. Professor Beckham was one of the finest professors of Aspen College, and Eveline wanted to get his assistance in studies. Even as one of the best students, she was not without her share of fears. But now that she understands how Tiffany's deception caused her to lose focus on her career and divert her attention from her studies in an attempt to win Gabriel over, she will never want to repeat the same mistakes. Eveline had allowed others to influence her life wrongly, but not anymore. She was going to live life to the fullest and pursue her dream of becoming a prosperous businesswoman. Eveline walked and took a seat in front of Professor Beckham's desk. While she was in her office talking to the professor about something that had to do with her studies, Tiffany stood outside his office wondering why Eveline visited Professor Beckham's office. When the bell rang, she followed her surreptitiously, wondering if she would meet Gabriel. However, her assumption was incorrect, as she ended up at the staff office instead of meeting Gabriel. "Why is she taking so long?" Tiffany mumbled, wondering what Eveline needed to talk to the professor, but her train of thought was interrupted when she saw Gabriel approaching her. Tiffany ducked behind the pillar quickly, hiding herself from Gabriel until he knocked on Professor Beckham's office door and walked in. When the door shut, Tiffany's expression grew melancholic at the thought of Gabriel and Eveline being together. She wondered what both Gabriel and Eveline had to discuss with the professor and how she wasn't aware of it. Gabriel paused for a few seconds when his eyes fell on Eveline before Professor Beckham's voice broke his trance. "Gabriel, what brings you here?" Professor Beckham questioned, glancing at Gabriel. It was then Eveline, too, turned to see the person who had just walked in. Eveline saw a flicker of confusion in his eyes the instant their eyes met, but she quickly averted her gaze, ignoring Gabriel entirely. Gabriel's heart fell, but he got himself together fast and moved over to the table. "These are the project reports that you requested, Professor." Gabriel turned over the assignment file to Professor Beckham. Professor Beckham gave Gabriel a perplexed look before turning his eyes on the report. "That was too quick, Gabriel. You were supposed to hand these reports to me by the end of this month. If so, congratulations on finishing your research project." Professor Beckham praised Gabriel. "See, Miss Miller, this is the reason I advised you to ask Gabriel for assistance. He is the most qualified student to assist you with the business management course," he added. Eveline was meant to convince Professor Beckham to guide her through the semester, but he had a seminar in Columbia on the week and would be returning by the end of this month. He suggested Eveline call Gabriel for advice because he did not want her to miss her studies as a result of him. While Eveline was content to wait for him to return, Professor Beckham was concerned that Eveline would miss those lessons while he was away. Unaware of what had transpired, Gabriel quickly looked away when he heard Eveline's reply. "That is all right, Professor. I can wait until you get back," she uttered, politely declining his suggestion. How was Eveline supposed to agree with Professor Beckham when she refused to seek Gabriel's guidance the other day? However, Professor Beckham was unable to turn down Eveline's request. Since Eveline was one of the smarter students, he was unable to compromise her academics because he had always given his students' requests for advice greater weight. "Gabriel, will it be okay for you to tutor Eveline until I return?" Professor Beckham questioned, glancing at Gabriel. Tiffany stood there for 15 minutes, waiting for Gabriel or Eveline to leave. Finally, after 15 minutes, Professor Beckham's office door opened, and Gabriel left. Tiffany was about to walk towards Gabriel, but she stopped to look at the person behind him. The joy in her eyes disappeared. Her brows furrowed in confusion as she watched Gabriel turn to face Eveline. Quickly hiding back, Tiffany tried to eavesdrop on them. But no matter what, she was unable to hear a word. Meanwhile, there was an awkward silence between Eveline and Gabriel. While Eveline was cursing her fate, which slapped right into her face, Gabriel was somewhat happy with Professor Beckham's suggestion. When would you like to start the lessons? I am free this afternoon. If that is okay, let us go to the library and start studying, Gabriel said in a tone that was more gentle than ever. Gabriel's indulgence momentarily surprised Eveline, but she was unable to express her disapproval. Regardless of how charming he spoke to her, she would constantly question his motivations. Eveline sneered mentally, recalling how Gabriel agreed with Professor Beckham when he would have refused to guide her. He had left the other day when she refused to ask for his assistance, but now he was obligingly complying with the professor's request to tutor her by the time he returned. Just as she turned to face him, out of the corner of her eye, she noticed a figure lurking behind the pillar. It didn't take long for Eveline to realize who it was, and she instantly changed her idea and put on a smile. Eveline's smile made Gabriel's eyes prick up, and his heart skipped a beat. It was the same smile he had been missing since yesterday. And at last, he caught a glimpse of the former Eveline once more. Eveline took a step and moved slightly closer to Gabriel, almost surprising him. As long as you are comfortable teaching me, I do not mind. Gabriel swallowed at Eveline's honey-colored words. He was taken aback by Eveline's sudden boldness. However, it was also the first time he had noticed Eveline's natural beauty. Her black hair flowed smoothly over her shoulder. Those hazel-brown eyes stared brightly at him, and those heart-shaped lips appeared so juicy that he wanted to kiss them. Eveline waited to see how Gabriel would respond, but the longer he continued to stare at her like a devoted puppy, the more she felt like ranting at him. What with this look as if he is smitten by me? Eveline considered it for a moment, but quickly changed her mind because she knew Gabriel would never look at her that way. Tiffany, on the other hand, was shocked to see Gabriel's lack of resistance toward Eveline. She remembered how he hated being touched, or even shared a meter radius with any girl. But with Eveline, he appeared comfortable. "All right, let us meet in the library after lunch," Gabriel eventually said, emerging from his reverie with a sincere smile on the corner of his lips. This time Eveline was taken aback by Gabriel's response to her. This was the first time she had seen Gabriel smile at her, and that too with such genuineness, and it somewhat melted her heart. "No, Eveline, you can't lose your focus this time. Remember how he treated you back then. Don't fall for his charms." Eveline took a quick step back, her eyes growing cold as she thought of Gabriel's cruelty in her previous life crossed her mind. Gabriel's smile vanished at Eveline's sudden retreat. Giving him a quick nod, she then turned and walked away from there without sparing him another glance. Tiffany hurriedly hid herself, thinking Eveline would go before she approached Gabriel. However, to her surprise, Eveline stood right before her. Tiffany froze, her eyes unnaturally still. The sight of Eveline's icy gaze caused her mind to go blank. "Tiffany, what are you doing here, trying to sneak up on us?" Eveline asked, her gaze piercing her every being. Eveline would have ignored Tiffany, but when she saw her stalking them, she couldn't control her urge to get back on her. Tiffany had taken advantage of her kindness back then, but in this life, she wouldn't let her fool her. She acted like a friend to whom Eveline could put her faith, only to see her crumble that trust in front of her eyes. Gabriel, who observed Eveline stop abruptly, furrowed. She was looking at something behind the pillar with apparent displeasure. "What's the matter?" he said, and without wasting any time, he quickly reached her side. "What's wrong?" Gabriel asked Eveline before he followed her line of sight and found Tiffany behind the pillar. "You? What are you doing here?" he asked, giving Tiffany a serious look. Eveline, who had no idea that Gabriel would follow her, smile. She could not help but notice the expression on Tiffany's face and wonder how she would react. Tiffany, however, was astounded to see Gabriel. It was unexpected, but looking at Gabriel with that displeased look on his face made her heart race. She looked back and forth between Gabriel and Eveline, trying to think of a lie, but before she could say anything, Eveline spoke. "She was waiting for me? Weren't you Tiffany?" Eveline questioned, darting her gaze to Tiffany, who was once more left perplexed. Tiffany squinted her eyes, unsure of what Eveline was attempting to accomplish. One moment she was accusing her of following them, and the next moment she was covering up for her. "Then why did you appear so displeased looking at her?" Gabriel furrowed his brow upon hearing Eveline's response. Gabriel had noticed the same look on Eveline's face when she saw Tiffany coming with him. The kind of despise that even Eveline couldn't hide made Gabriel wonder whether she hated Tiffany, and whatever she told him this morning was true. I am sorry, but Eveline refused to take me with her because she no longer finds me helpful. She thinks I am somewhat hindering her image. Although Gabriel had trouble believing Tiffany at the time, his mind strayed when he saw Eveline's response to Tiffany. Gabriel was aware that Eveline was not the type of girl to discard someone when they were no longer useful to her. She was the kind of girl who valued relationships. So why, he wondered, would she treat Tiffany that way? Tiffany, on the other hand, wasn't expecting Gabriel to follow Eveline. But now that he did, she had to put up with the act and stop herself from getting exposed. Yeah, I was waiting for Eveline, she blurted, trying not to show how nervous she was, and moved to stand beside Eveline. Eveline smiled at Tiffany's submissiveness. She knew Tiffany would never want Gabriel to know her reality and would do everything to keep her lies protected. Gabriel furrowed at Tiffany's behavior, but he quickly darted his gaze toward Eveline and reminded her. After lunch, in the library, he said, before leaving the two by themselves and walking off. Tiffany let out a sigh as she watched Gabriel's retreating figure, but before she could question Eveline about it, she noticed that she was turning to go without giving her another look. What is wrong with her? Tiffany furrowed before she decided to follow her. Gabriel arrived at the classroom just in time to witness Stefan flirting with a classmate. His best friend was known for hanging out with several girls, but he was never truly in a relationship with any of them. In terms of their personalities, Stefan and Gabriel were completely different from one another. However, he had the same attractive appearance as Gabriel, and was just as popular with the girls. The moment Stefan noticed Gabriel, he dropped his act and excused himself before approaching him. Gabby, why didn't you tell me that you already prepared the reports? I would not need to beg for assistance from others. Stefan grumbled, gesturing to the girl who had given him a seductive grin. Stefan gave her an awkward smile in return, then turned back to face Gabriel. Observing the brief exchange of gazes, Gabriel shook his head helplessly before packing his stuff. And what would have happened if I had informed you? Were you going to do anything about it? Gabriel asked, looking at Stefan. Whether he told Stefan or not, he knew that his friend was not going to be of assistance to him. He actually had to put in more effort to assist him instead. Stefan sighed after giving his remarks some thought. You are correct. Nothing would have happened. But at least you would have assisted me in writing my report. You are aware that compiling all the necessary data and writing a report on it is extremely tiring. Most of the time, Stefan relied on Gabriel for his projects and assignments because he had never taken his studies seriously, and despite not even trying to learn a word, he would still manage to get good grades. You should not worry. Helena will assist you properly, Gabriel responded. Although Stefan was a sloth, he was also a proficient worker, so Gabriel did not have to worry about his made-up grievances. Anyways, let's go and eat something. I'm starving to death. With a quick pat on Gabriel's shoulder, Stefan and Gabriel left the classroom and made their way straight to the cafeteria. Gabriel looked around the room, but he could not find Eveline anywhere. He sighed and took the seat. Eveline would often tag them along for lunch and would never stop talking about her day, just to seize his attention. Gabriel hardly responded to any of her words. However, he was attentive to what she said. Why isn't Eveline here yet? Have you seen her? Stefan, who was equally surprised by her absence, inquired of Gabriel instead. I will give her a call instead, Stefan stated as he took out his phone. The ring went twice and Eveline answered his call. Eve, where are you? He asked. Brother Stefan, I won't be able to join you. Eveline's painful voice made Stefan furrow and he inquired, Eve, are you all right? Why do you sound like you are in pain? Stefan's words caught Gabriel's attention, and he furrowed in concern. Meanwhile, Eveline was inside the restroom. Sadly, she had her period, and to make matters worse, she had forgotten to bring one sanitary pad. Unable to leave the room, she decided to wait for assistance, but she found it difficult to wait long because of her worsening cramp. Eveline was going to call one of her female professors for assistance when she unexpectedly received a call from Stefan. Trying to sound as normal as she can, Stefan ended up catching her lies, causing her to spill the truth to him. Eveline stood by the wall, trying to bear the pain, but her knees gave up quickly, and she scrunched up a little. Just as she was ready to give up, someone sprang into the restroom, making her shudder in terror. Gabriel, Eveline mumbled, realizing that someone was no one else but Gabriel. Grab this now and head straight to the cubicle. Gabriel rushed to Eveline, handed her a bag, and dashed out of the girls' restroom like a gust of wind. It took Eveline a moment to realize what had happened, but as she looked down at the bag she was holding, she saw that it contained some sanitary pads. It caught her off guard to see Gabriel worried about her, but she brushed it off quickly and went into one of the cubicles to get things done. Stefan, meanwhile, was staring at Gabriel wide-eyed outside the girls' restroom. He was astounded by what he saw because it all transpired in a matter of seconds, leaving him with confused thoughts regarding the entire situation. "How did you accomplish that?" he inquired, still attempting to make sense of everything that had happened and how quickly Gabriel gave Eveline the bag and stormed back. "Stop talking," Gabriel yelled, ignoring his shocked expression as he peered around. Though he was relieved that no one saw him enter the girls' restroom, he was still surprised to see himself acting boldly. Eveline left after a short while, but not before catching Stefan and Gabriel's attention with her still pale appearance. "Come, let's bring you to the doctor," Gabriel said, making Eveline look at her in shock. Just as she was finishing her thought of Gabriel running after her in the girls' restroom, he returned and showed his concern for her. Eveline remembered how the butler had told Gabriel about her illness back then, but he had ignored her. She was burning with fever and had hardly eaten anything that day. But her cruel husband ignored the fatigue on her face and walked away from the dinner table because she burned the food that day. Gabriel did not mind giving her a quick glance, but now he was expressing worry over such a trivial matter. Eveline's eyes turned cold and she completely ignored Gabriel and turned to look at Stefan. "I appreciate your help, Brother Stefan, but I need one more favor," Eveline said, putting Stefan in an awkward position as she turned to him for assistance. "Can you bring me this medicine?" Eveline requested that Stefan bring the medication she requested, saying, "I need it to stop my cramps." Stefan nodded quickly and left without saying anything. Gabriel frowned as he watched Eveline give him the cold shoulder and turn to leave. He remembered how sweetly she had spoken to him earlier, and now she was back to being distant from him. Gabriel approached her, fisting his palm, but halted in front of her, obstructing her path. "How long have you been having menstrual pain, and why do you take medication when you can just go home and rest?" Gabriel asked, getting ignited by the fact that Eveline would hide such important things from him. Gabriel had witnessed Eveline becoming ill during that time and was aware of her monthly discomfort. But instead of using a painkiller to numb the pain, she would just rest and heal. Eveline yanked his hand away from her and shot him a strange look. "I do not want cramps to be a barrier for us today, as we have lessons to make up." Gabriel narrowed his eyes suspiciously at Eveline and asked, "You are going to take medication to end this session as quickly as possible?" Eveline furrowed her brow, glaring at Gabriel, and went back to walking. Gabriel couldn't believe what he just saw and felt like his heart pricked. Eveline's sudden change in behavior was beyond Gabriel's comprehension, but her apathy was beginning to irk him. With his jaw clenched, he storms out of there only to trip over Stefan en route. "Hey, Gabby, where are you going and where is Eve?" Stefan asked when he didn't see Eveline. Gabriel shot a glare at him and walked past without giving him a response. "Huh, what happened to him all of a sudden?" Stefan sighed, perplexed by Gabriel's abrupt outburst, and then proceeded toward the girls' restroom, where he discovered Eveline sitting on the stairs. "Eve," Stefan quickly rushed to her side. He was aware that Eveline experienced excruciating menstrual pain and became ill during the process, but she appeared worse this time. "Are you sure this medicine will help, or should I take you to the doctor?" Stefan was genuinely concerned for his sister and wanted to help her as much as possible. With a genuine smile, Eveline refused to accept him and shook her head. "It is okay, Brother Stefan. This medication will ease my pain." Stefan sighed as he furrowed his brows at her attempt to hide the hurt behind that smile. He then helped her take the medicine and passed her a bottle. Eveline swallowed the tablet, sipped from the bottle, and wiped her lips. It took her a few minutes to feel the pain in her stomach reduce, and she smiled convincingly. "See how the pain is gradually getting better?" she said as she wiped the perspiration from her forehead and made herself get up. "Are you sure you do not want to bring me to the doctor?" Stefan asked, following her lead. "No, I'm fine, so go ahead and flirt with your flings," Eveline said with a smile. I have to head to the library for lessons. Library? Stefan, who had no idea that Gabriel was teaching Eveline, was once again at a loss for words. It was then Eveline realized what she had said and quickly sneaked from there. Goodbye, brother Stefan, and once again thank you. Stefan watched Eveline sprint from there before he decided to drop the thought of understanding her words and walk away. Eveline walked out of the main building and toward the Aspen College Library, which was located on the east side. Even though Eveline only needed 5 minutes to walk from the main building to the library, it took her longer because her legs were still too weak for her to walk quickly. The pain had reduced, but not entirely subsided, and she could still feel the weakness in her legs every now and then. By the time she reached the library, Gabriel had already been waiting for her. The moment their eyes met, Gabriel ignored her and walked inside. Eveline scowled, but she followed him without responding to his impoliteness. Her only desire was to end this one-week ordeal of being near Gabriel before Professor Beckham took over the classes. Walking to the marketing book session on the first floor, Gabriel found an empty table and took a seat on the chair. Eveline did the same and started removing the book from her back. Here are some notes I made to help you easily understand the topics. She was astounded by Gabriel's consideration as he handed her a book. Gabriel had prepared a few notes for Eveline ever since Richard persuaded him to help her with her studies. But on their first day of tutoring, Eveline refused to learn anything from him. However, she never imagined that he would actually listen to her, to the extent that he took notes for her. Eveline needed a few moments to gather her thoughts before blurting out, "Thank you," even though she knew it. "Excuse me, what did you just say?" Gabriel's eyebrows furrowed as he wondered if Eveline had thanked him. Contrarily, Eveline abruptly snapped out of her reverie and stammered away. "Nothing, can we just get started?" she said, brushing off Gabriel's comment. Eveline was unaware that she had unintentionally thanked Gabriel, but she bounced back quickly and changed the topic. Gabriel's brow furrowed as he realized he had heard her say things like, "Thank you." But Eveline's rejection ended their exchange. Without pondering too much, Gabriel started teaching Eveline. He explained everything to her in detail, covering the topic he had mentioned in the book. Eveline had always looked up to Gabriel, which eventually inspired her to be among the top students. She wanted to leave an impression on Gabriel, so she would put in a lot of effort to get his recognition. Stefan once told her that Gabriel liked girls who were goal-oriented and ambitious. Because of this, Eveline continued to change in the hopes that one day he would recognize her value. However, everything changed when Tiffany revealed that post, and Gabriel began to view Eveline differently. Gabriel noticed that Eveline had been spacing out, and he cleared his throat, seizing her attention. "Eve, is there something you don't understand?" he inquired as to whether her lack of understanding of his words was the reason she was spacing off. Eveline jolted out of her thoughts and looked at Gabriel in a daze. Despite having known her since childhood, she was unable to comprehend how Gabriel concluded that she was the source of the photo leak. This thought had always pricked her like a needle because Gabriel's attitude toward her had completely changed after that day, and he started ignoring her. As she continued to stare at him, her eyes began to well. Her heart began to pound suddenly, and she found it difficult to breathe. The thought of his lifeless stare on her caused her to perspire profusely once more. Even at the last moment, she failed to see an ounce of fear in his eyes, and that made her give up her love for him. Eveline had loved Gabriel from the moment she understood its true meaning. But after chasing him all her life, the result she got in the end was losing her life. However, she has learned her lesson and will not be inclining her heart towards him this time. "Eve, is everything all right? Are you feeling sick again?" Gabriel noticed the change in her expression and panicked. He had practically dashed to the pharmacy to get Eveline the supplies she needed when he heard Stefan say that Eveline needed their assistance. Then, he hurried to the girls' bathroom, obliging everyone else. Gabriel could not just stand there because he knew Eveline must be in pain and in need of support, even though he was not sure what had gotten into him for making such a risky move. Gabriel was about to reach out to touch her when a tear rolled down her eyes, and he paused. Something inside his chest broke watching Eveline crying, and he felt like taking her in his embrace. Eveline, on the other hand, felt a sharp pain in her stomach and winced, alerting Gabriel the very moment. "Eve." Dropping his hesitation, Gabriel quickly held her shoulder and watched her cry in pain. My stomach aches, she said, clutching on her abdomen before another sharp pain shooted, making everything go dark. Please, doctor, save me, I beg of you. Please, please don't give up. My child wants to live with me. Eveline furrowed in her sleep, sweating profoundly as a dream occupied her mind, and she kept blabbering something incoherent. Please don't give up, please. Eveline suddenly jolted from her slumber, breathing heavily. Eve. Gabriel's voice drew her out from her trance, and she looked at him in confusion. Eveline furrowed, finding Gabriel before her, with her hand slowly resting on her stomach. Realization soon hit her muddled thought, clearing the fog in her head, bringing her back to the reality. It was a dream. She spoke to herself, bringing her eyes back at Gabriel, who appeared more than concerned for her. Gabriel rushed Eveline to the infirmary the moment she fainted. After a thorough examination and a few inquiry, he was warned not to let her take painkiller empty stomach, and if so, then something whose dosage wasn't high as the one she had consumed. It was then did he find that Eveline had not eaten anything since morning. However, Gabriel was relieved when the doctor confirmed there was nothing wrong with her, and after some rest she would wake up. However, Eveline suddenly started crying in her sleep, mumbling something he could grasp. However, her tears ripped his heart apart, and he panicked, ready to call the doctor when she suddenly woke up. Eveline was still in the middle of processing when the door to the infirmary room opened and both Stefan and Daniel rushed inside. Eve. Eveline. Their worried voice broke the deafening silence inside the room, with Stefan and Daniel striding next to Eveline's bed. I told you not to take those medicines. Why didn't you listen to me? See how badly it took a toll on you. Stefan, like the older brother, scolded her. Daniel, who also learned about Eveline, skipped his class and rushed to meet her. Thank God it was due to the medicine that you faint. I thought you say the post and lost your mind. Both Gabriel and Eveline furrowed, hearing Daniel's incoherent words. Stefan palmed himself and gestured Daniel to stop. However, he ignored his actions and continued to blabber. What post you are talking about? Eveline inquired, unable to get his words. Stefan groaned helplessly that caused Gabriel look at him before Daniel pulled out the phone and opened the college form. Here, this is the post, he said, shoving the phone right into their faces. Both Gabriel and Eveline were taken aback to see the photos of them with close proximity, circular online lovebirds. Gabriel and Eveline were seen kissing each other near the staircase. Who did this? Gabriel glanced at Daniel and let out a frustrated groan. How would I know? He panikedly shrugged. Stefan, who had been silent the whole time, was suddenly disturbed. I think we should first look after Eve and handle the rest later. She needs rest, he said, ignoring all of their weird gazes. Stefan saw the post before he hurried to the infirmary, but he was unable to confront the poster because Gabriel had called to let him know about Eveline's condition. I am completely fine, Eveline said, drawing everyone's attention. She lurched out of the comforter and climbed off the bed, ready to leave, but a strong hand grabbed her wrist. Where do you think you are going? Gabriel asked in a stern tone. Eveline gave him a snide look and said, And who are you to ask me that? I appreciate your care for me, but that does not mean you have to take charge of me. As Eveline spoke to Gabriel in a chilly yet harsh manner, the room fell silent. Not only Stefan and Daniel were shocked beyond words, but even Gabriel was taken aback. Eveline yanked her hand away from his grip and started to walk. Stefan soon snapped out of his thoughts and sprinted behind her, leaving the room. Gabriel was still trying to process when Daniel's words snapped him out of his thoughts. Are you again going to blame her for those pictures? Unable to understand Daniel, Gabriel gave him a perplexing look, but the unpleasing look in his eyes made his heart clench at the realization. I am aware that you blamed Eveline for that post back then, but what about right now? She was constantly present here with you. Are you still under the impression that she leaked everything and blamed her? He asked. Daniel wouldn't have questioned Gabriel if he hadn't heard his conversation with Stefan the other day. He blamed Eveline for being the one behind disclosing her crush on him publicly, and he just couldn't stand her anymore. I expect that out of everyone. At least you knew Eveline better. Daniel's words were like a reality check for Gabriel that made him realize his mistake. It makes sense why Eveline was reluctant to associate with him. Taking a deep breath, Gabriel sighed before turning on his heel and following Eveline. Eveline strode down the lengthy hallway, prepared to face Tiffany. She was aware that her alleged friend was the one who had used this low-cost method of defaming her, and now all she wanted was to confront her. "Eve, where are you going?" Stefan ran after her and stopped her by grabbing her arm. The instant Eveline turned to face Stefan, he was astounded by the angry look she gave him. For the first time, Stefan noticed Eveline was furious, and he knew why. This was not the first attempt to damage her reputation, but Stefan was afraid that if he made a mistake, things would get worse. "Brother Stefan, please let me go. I will not spare the person behind these cheap tricks today," blurted Eveline, releasing her hand from his grasp. Stefan frowned as he watched Eveline pick up her stroll, but he again blocked her path. "Do you know who it is?" he asked. Stefan remembered that he had confronted her the first time someone posted a picture of her and Gabriel on the college students' forum. Even though he knew Eveline would not act irrationally, Gabriel's remarks forced him to speak with her and resolve the confusion. At that moment, he discovered that someone had secretly eavesdropped on her conversation with Tiffany, which he later revealed to the entire college. Stefan checked the ID from where the photos were uploaded in an attempt to assist Eveline in identifying the person behind it. However, the user had erased the ID, so he was unable to locate them. Eveline awoke from her daze and turned to face Stefan. She was aware that Stefan had been unable to identify the offender at the time, but she was not sure if it was safe to tell him about Tiffany, as she lacked any proof. Eveline paused as the realization drew to her, and she shook her head. She cannot expose Tiffany without proof, or else she will manipulate the whole thing and put all the blame on her again. Stefan gave Eveline a perplexed look and sighed. "Eve, I know you are upset, but please calm down. You are still weak and need rest. Please allow me to take you home." Stefan said it out of concern. He truly had no clue what had gotten into Eveline, but the way she looked at him gave him chills. Something about Eveline was different, and he could feel it in his bones. The innocent, happy Eveline was lost somewhere, and he couldn't help but blame himself for it. Had he not revealed to her that Gabriel thought she was responsible for sharing her emotions in public, she would not have experienced such heartbreak. Eveline, on the other hand, noticed Stefan's genuine worries and sighed, dismissing all her thoughts and clearing her head. "I appreciate your concern, Brother Stefan, but I do not want everyone to have an opportunity to make fun of me if I leave now," Eveline said, expressing her thoughts. She was aware that by now everyone had seen those pictures and would be judging her character the same way they had earlier. Students were making fun of her and making hurtful remarks about her. She had stopped attending the college for a few days after finding herself crying at the time due to their hurtful remarks. However, she cannot let anyone judge her now that she knows someone purposely manipulated the whole thing. Eveline assured Stefan before she retreated to the classroom. She noticed some students staring at her oddly as she was walking, but she kept her head up and positioned herself in front of the door. Eveline decided to attend the class even though it had already started, if only to make sure that her public persona remained intact despite the leaked images. "Miss Miller, are you aware of the time the class begins?" Professor Rubik asked, glaring sharply at Eveline. Professor Rubik valued punctuality more than the flimsy excuses students offer for missing class. But glancing at Eveline's pale complexion, he wondered what might have happened to her. Despite the accusing looks directed at her, Eveline didn't waver and said, "I apologize, Professor. I was running behind schedule because of an urgent matter." Students began to whisper, hearing Eveline's response. Some even threw disgusting stares at her that caused Professor Rubik to raise his voice. "Silence." Scanning the entire room with his stern eyes, he silenced them before bringing back his gaze on Eveline. Eveline would not have been spared by Rubik, but he could not just stand by and watch one of the top students miss such an important class, so he allowed her to go to class without saying anything else. Because of Eveline's outstanding academic record and flawless study habits, all of the professors acknowledged her, and as a result, Rubik waived his rule and let her attend the lecture. "Enter, but make sure you will not be late the next time." Eveline nodded contentedly in response to Professor Rubik's firm tone before taking her place at the desk. Such a shameless girl. I assumed she would have fled, covering her face, after being discovered shamelessly. Nevertheless, observe how unperturbed she is. A student seated behind Eveline mumbled, "I am curious as to why Gabriel found her attractive. She is such a cheapo, always clinging to boys." Is he even aware that she is also having affairs with Daniel and Stefan? The other said. The girls made crude remarks about Eveline while she sat there in silence, but Tiffany's lack of interest in their comments made her curious. Despite sitting next to her, she did not even dare to look at her. Tiffany, I will not let you win this time. You did everything to ruin my life, but not anymore. Now that I'm back, I won't let you destroy me this time. Eveline promised herself before darting her gaze back at the podium. After hearing from Stefan that Eveline had decided to attend the class, Gabriel waited for her outside the college building. Though he was irritated by her intransigence, he was unable to force his way into the classroom and confront her. But more than just venting his annoyance, he was curious as to who took those photos. Gabriel recalled that when no students were loitering around the girls' restroom, it was puzzling that those images were taken so close to the location. Why did you tell me that Eveline wasn't the one to post those pictures? Gabriel suddenly snapped, darting his infuriating gaze toward Stefan. Stefan, who was preoccupied with something on his phone, suddenly bolted out of fear. What? Stefan gasped in exasperation. Why did not you confront me when you knew that Eveline was not the one who posted those pictures and disclosed her feelings for me? Gabriel repeated as he lunged towards Stefan and stood in front of him like a furious beast. Hearing his disapproving comments, Stefan straightened up and crossed his hand over his chest, his expression hardening. And you would have believed me? He inquired. Stefan's icy comment caused Gabriel's face to wrinkle, and he clenched his teeth in fury. Why wouldn't I believe you? He asked through his gritting teeth. Stefan's words felt even more suffocating to Gabriel, like an arrow straight through his chest. Because you didn't believe the girl whom we practically grew up with. How conveniently you blamed her for revealing her emotions when you knew Eveline would not do anything that would upset you, Stefan said, raising his voice a little as he addressed Gabriel directly. Gabriel's eyes flitted in shame as his words caused him to feel guilty once more. Out of every girl who ever tried to get close to him, Gabriel had always been comfortable with Eveline. Why? Because he had known her since he was a young child. But because of a chance conversation, he misunderstood her and incorrectly accused her. I did not think you would condemn her, he continued. Hearing Stefan's harsh words, Gabriel's heart fell, realizing what a huge type of fool he was. Is this the reason Eveline has been acting so aloof toward me? He wondered. Gabriel sighed and lowered his gaze, embarrassed. He wanted to apologize to Eveline and clear up any confusion, but would she accept his apology? Should she persist in acting as though she is unaware of his presence, causing him to regret every moment they spent together? Gabriel turned to face Stefan just as he opened his mouth to speak when he suddenly spoke. There she is. Gabriel quickly looked in Eveline's direction as she was about to exit the building, but before she could get there, someone stopped her. Eveline, how are you doing? I heard you passed out. Tiffany inquired while feigning ignorance of the situation, even though word of it had already spread throughout the college. Grinning, Eveline stared at Tiffany as she attempted to break through her act. I thought you took my words seriously the other day, Eveline stated, causing Tiffany to be circumspect in her speech. She went on, that is why you even gave me a quick glance during class. Tiffany's face twisted at Eveline's audacious comment. She indeed turned a blind eye because she was anxious about Eveline's presence, despite being publicly humiliated by those photos. After what Eveline had done to her on the staircase, Tiffany mistakenly believed that she had avenged her. It was shocking to learn that Eveline was a thick-skinned girl who hardly ever displayed signs of shame, because the last time she had done this, her friend vanished for several days before reappearing. Tiffany did not think Eveline had changed her behavior toward her abruptly because she had somehow figured out what her motivation was. Did Gabriel warn her about me? She wondered, thinking back to how she had brainwashed Gabriel while Eveline was away by giving him false information. Tiffany cast a quick glance at her, wondering if she should investigate and validate her own doubts. I was worried for you, and I'm sorry that I couldn't talk much. You know that Professor Rubik does not give students much leeway when they disrupt his class, Tiffany said, putting on a pitiful look. Eveline squinted her eyes and nodded. Now, what do you want from me? Eveline asked. Tiffany scowled, offended by Eveline's impoliteness. Although she had been attempting to be patient with her, her haughtiness was gradually getting the better of her. Why do you keep saying the same thing to me again and again? You believe that the only reason I speak with you is to get something from you? She asked. With Tiffany's expression changing, Eveline grinned and said, Am I wrong because you always come to me when you need something from me? But you know what? I am over this self-serving behavior. So let me come straight to the point. I no longer want to be friends with you. Tiffany widened her eyes upon hearing Eveline's comment, and she quickly grabbed her arm. Well, what did you say? Tiffany inquired, clutching her hand tightly. Eveline frowned as she observed Tiffany's vulnerable side, but she secretly wished for her to respond in this manner. Eveline had to provoke her to show her that she was not the same girl she had been fooling for years. Did you not befriend me to get close to Gabriel? Eveline said, leaving Tiffany speechless. Eveline could no longer play that innocent girl who easily let anyone fool her. She wanted to warn Tiffany now that she had reached her limit. Tiffany's face turned pale. She could tell that Eveline wasn't joking with her this time, and she had somewhat found her true intention. No, she just can't know about me. And how would she? I have been very careful. No, I just can't let her ruin my plan. Tiffany shook her head, denying her accusation, and grabbed onto her hand again. No, Eveline, you're getting me wrong? Why would I do that when I know how much you love Gabriel? Eveline became enraged as she watched her pretend to be innocent. All of the innocent things she had done in the past had clouded her judgment, and she became so furious that she pulled her hand away from Tiffany, causing her to fall. Ah! Eveline stared at Tiffany in shock as she was held in Gabriel's arms. Are you all right? He asked out of concern before helping her stand on her feet. What is wrong with you, Eve? He snapped, infuriated with the scene he had just witnessed. Tiffany, still in disbelief, darted her eyes to Eveline, who shot her a glare, and an idea sparked in her mind. Eve, I know you hate me, but please don't break our friendship. I assure you that I never intended to become friends with you with a motive. I can never think of stealing the boy my best friend likes, so Gabriel is all yours, Tiffany begged, taking advantage of the circumstances. She smirked as she looked at the students who were watching the drama unfold in front of them. Eveline, you dare to push me. Tell me how you're going to defend yourself. Eveline noticed the glint of evilness in Tiffany's eyes and scoffed disbelievingly. You expect me to believe your falsehoods, Tiffany? I promise you this trick is outdated, so drop this act and get lost. Eveline was done with this bullshit. Ignore her ranting and sprint from there. Surprised by Eveline's behavior, Gabriel chased after her and ignored the student watching the scene with interest, while Tiffany continued to sob, acting as though Eveline had treated her unfairly. Tiffany Gracie, who was also there, hurried over to comfort her. Previously, she had doubts about Tiffany's statements, but after witnessing Eveline's cruel treatment of her in front of everyone, she realized that everything Tiffany had said was true. I never thought Eveline would be so cruel to her only friend, using her the entire time and, when fed up, tossing her aside, Gracie said, feeling bad for Tiffany. Tiffany smirked inwardly, finally earning the sympathy of the students who happened to see Eveline's true face. Eve, stop. Where are you going? Gabriel sprinted over to her and took hold of her hand to prevent her from going. Eveline started to pull his hand away, but he pulled her hard, bringing their chests together. Eveline was momentarily distracted by the proximity, but she wriggled when she saw Tiffany's reflection in Gabriel's eyes. Just go away, Gabriel. I do not want to talk to you right now, Eveline yelled, trying her best to break free from his hold. No, first explain to me why you shoved Tiffany. She would have fallen down the steps. Gabriel said, remembering how Tiffany might have fallen if he had arrived at the proper time. Eveline paused, giving Gabriel a disgruntled look. The corner of her lips curled into a sinister smile, leaving Gabriel stunned by her behavior. Your girl is safe. Do not worry, nothing happened to her, Eveline said, yanking his hand away and taking a step back. I am aware that you will always point the finger at me. So be it, because I am never going to run after you for explaining anything, she said, giving him a final glance before turning and walking away to her car. Stefan arrived and saw Gabriel remain motionless, while Eveline had already gotten into her car and departed. Gabby, what happened? Why did Eve react this way? He asked, perplexed by everything that occurred before their eyes. Even though Stefan could understand where this response was coming from, he sighed. This was not the Eveline they knew. As much as Stefan was shocked, Gabriel too didn't expect Eveline to react this way. The words she said pricked his heart. Gabriel wanted to follow her, but his legs remained immobile as he remained rooted to the dusty ground until her car vanished from view. Eveline, meanwhile, tried to calm her nerves while sitting in the back seat of the car. It was difficult for her to breathe because whatever had happened not too long ago kept replaying itself in her head. Eveline had always been a composed girl, but after everything she went through, it made it hard for her to even stand the sight of those people who hurt her deeply. "Uncle Tom, please take me to the cemetery," Eveline said, as she was unable to soothe her mind and heart. The vehicle soon came to a stop in front of the Eternal Promise Cemetery, with Eveline hopping out of the car and walking inside. Eveline used to go to her mother's gravestone and confide in her whenever she was feeling down. Today was yet another day when she found herself visiting her mother, as she wanted to share her biggest trauma with her. Eveline was 4 when she lost Jennifer to cancer, and she barely remembered how she looked when she was healthy. Jonathan, though, pointed out that she was a perfect duplicate of her mother, which made her happy to have an image of her in her mind. Standing next to Jennifer's gravestone, Eveline stared at her without saying a word. Still, her eyes continued to well up with tears. Eveline's heart was heavy recalling her past, and her hand instinctively rested on her stomach. "I know you are wondering why I have not said anything yet. That is because I am unsure of where to begin. You will think I am a fool, a crazy person who would tell you that I came from the future. But believe me, it is true. Mom, the person standing here is just a body. Your daughter passed away." At last, Eveline opened her eyes and let the tears roll down her cheeks. "And the most hilarious thing is, the people I trust the most killed me." She chuckled, removing the stains from her face, and knelt before the stone gradually. Back then, Eveline had only relied on her mother in sharing her deepest pain. Though Jonathan was always there for her, she couldn't let him know the pain she was going through while trying to gain her husband's trust. With Stefan's genuine assistance, Eveline endeavored to demonstrate her innocence, fulfilling his brotherly duties. He broke his friendship with Gabriel because he realized how badly he had been treating Eveline. "I know you would never want to know what I have been through in my past life, but the pain is too heavy to forget. It has left a scar on me because that unrequited love cost the life of my child. Despite his innocence, his father's crusade claimed his life," she said, feeling the urge to rage crawling in her body. Eveline would always remember the coldness of Gabriel's eyes, which left a lasting impression on her. Even at the time of her death, he continued to remain indifferent, and that was enough to break the last straw of hope in her. "But if those people try to continue their evil plan on me, then this time I won't endure it. I am going to fight back and make them feel the same agony that I did. They will undoubtedly go to hell on earth for what they did to me." By the time Eveline returned home, she had been feeling a lot better. However, the moment she walked inside the house, Jonathan's voice startled her out of her trance. "Eve, my child, what happened to you?" Jonathan rushed to her and embraced her fragile body. The moment he learned about Eveline through Belle, he had been patiently waiting for her arrival. Jonathan was puzzled as to why it was taking Eveline so long to get home, but he was relieved as soon as he heard the car pull up to the mansion's gates. "Are you still feeling the pain? Do you want to call our family doctor?" Jonathan inquired as he keenly observed Eveline's appearance. She indeed looked tired, and her eyes were red as if she had been crying the entire time. "Please tell Dad," Eveline smiled, feeling a wave of satisfaction wash over her frail heart as she realized how concerned Jonathan was for her. "What if the one you loved never cared for you? There are still a lot of people who genuinely love and appreciate you. Eveline, you have your father." Her unconscious thoughts spoke, and she broadened her smile. "I just need some rest, Dad. I am fine." Eveline attempted to convince Jonathan, but he did not seem to be persuaded by her words because they did not match her appearance. "Are you sure? You are aware that we can speak?" he inquired. Eveline nodded in assurance, before Jonathan finally let her go to her room. Despite her fatigue, Eveline felt much better than she had earlier. "Young miss, I made some tea with chamomile. Enjoy it once you have showered." Susan walked in carrying the tea for her and placed it on the side table next to her bed before retreating. Eveline sighed before heading into the bathroom and taking a warm water bath to soothe her body ache. She got out, quickly changed, and took a seat on the bed, sipping the tea Susan had brought her. While enjoying the herbal flavor of the tea, she scanned the comments under the post. Even though Eveline did not bother to look closely at the pictures, she could tell how close they were by reading the comments. Some comments were, "How did Tiffany manage to take these clear pictures, though?" Eveline wondered how it was possible to get such clear pictures even at a distance. Gritting her teeth, Eveline clicked on the ID that had been posted in the photos and was shocked to find that it belonged to one of her classmates. "Alex? How is that possible?" Eveline looked at the profile photo, puzzled, and then she reached out to contact him by sending him a personal message on the app. Eveline had been certain that Tiffany had taken those photos because she had previously used the same method to discredit Eveline in the eyes of Gabriel and the entire college. However, after seeing who had actually posted them, Eveline realized that her situation had become more complicated. Eveline knew some students were divided into groups when it came to liking her. A few people genuinely admired her, while others detested her. Not because she was well-liked, but rather because she was close to their college crush, Gabriel. However, when someone revealed that she liked him, things became much worse. Eveline saw the boy online, so she waited for him to respond. But as soon as he saw her text, he abruptly disconnected, leaving her speechless. She wanted to confront him, but after reading her text, he just ignored her and disconnected. What the fuck? Eveline's lips tightened as stopped herself from cursing loudly. She couldn't believe he simply ignored her and went offline. Eveline clenched her jaw, threw her phone away, drank the tea all at once, and wiped the stain off her lips. She needed to be clear that she no longer had feelings for Gabriel and that he was just a friend. More specifically, her father's friend's son. Eveline wanted to cut ties with Gabriel in all ways, but she couldn't knowing how much his parents admired her. Their love remained unwavering, and they treated her like family despite being accused. There were occasions when Richard and Gabriel argued over his son's preference to work long hours in the office, while ignoring his wife. And Belle would encourage her to get into her son's good book by guiding her. However, it would all be for nothing since Gabriel was unable to show her his feelings or listen to his parents. Eveline paused, let out a long breath, sighed, and brushed away all the bothersome thoughts. I cannot break off my relationship with Gabriel entirely, but I can clear the air revolving around our relationship, Eveline said, making a mental note of what she was pursuing. While Eveline was planning on putting an end to this crush, Gabriel had isolated himself in his room, ignoring the rant of the person present alone. Finally, the post has been taken down, but what should we do about the one who uploaded it? Should we just spare him without confrontation? Stefan asked, tossing his phone aside and turning to look at Gabriel, who hadn't said a word yet. Gabriel was silent, however, his body was boiling in rage. The moment he found the culprit behind those photos, he wanted to go and beat the shit out of him. But he somehow forced himself to sit in one place. Gabriel had never cared what people thought of him. However, Eveline was someone who was close to him, and anyone voicing a demeaning word against her would make him lose his cool. The reason why Gabriel turned a blind eye to her feelings was because he wanted her to focus on studies rather than wasting her time on him. He knew she had goals, however, because of him, she was losing focus on them. But after she announced having crush on him publicly, he was irked only to later learnt that she was been misunderstood. No, I would like to have a long conversation with him personally. Tiffany was happily idly passing the time dreaming of Gabriel when she was startled out of her reverie by a sudden knock on the door of her bedroom. You witch! What the hell are you doing inside? Come out and clean up this mess you have created. Jacob yelled from outside and continued to bang on the door until she opened it. What is wrong, Dad? Tiffany said, gritting through her teeth. She detested this so-called father of hers, but she also knew that if she persisted in her disobedience, Jacob would eventually beat the shit out of her. Gazing through Tiffany's angry eyes, Jacob glared at her and yelled, "What kind of girl are you? Don't you know how to keep the house clean? Where the hell have you lost my lottery ticket?" Tiffany scowled at Jacob's irrational outburst. She realized her father wasn't intoxicated and sober enough to slap her if she answered him back rudely. What lottery ticket are you talking about? Tiffany inquired, trying to sound as normal as possible. Jacob had stolen some cash from Susan's wallet and was getting agitated trying to locate the ticket he had bought. But what frustrated him more was Tiffany's innocence. He remembered that he had the ticket in his jeans pocket the other night before he got home drunk, but when he woke up this morning, he could not find it. Ever since, he has been searching every nook and cranny of the house for it. Refusing to put up with Tiffany's ignorance, Jacob grabbed her hair, dragged her from her room into the living room, and shoved her to the bed. I am aware that it is your responsibility to keep the house clean. Search for my belongings before I beat the living daylights out of you, or else you and your mother will be reduced to nothing, Jacob yelled, kicking the stool that was lying on the ground and running out of the house. Tiffany sneered and shot her eyes in the direction where Jacob had just walked out. Then she reached into her pocket and withdrew the lottery ticket. You think I'm a fool to let you enjoy the money you win with this shit? Tiffany snarled, smashing the ticket in her hand. How dare you abuse me for this shit, huh? Tiffany furiously threw away the ticket, wiped her tears, and got to her feet. Tiffany hated being taken advantage of, especially by her father, who had never loved her at all. Her mother had been the only one to love and support her, but that love was destroyed the moment Tiffany started working for the Millers. Yes, the Millers, and the one with whom she shared her love and attention was Eveline, her innocent and kind young miss. Tiffany recalled going to the Miller mansion when she was 4 years old. It was after the death of Eveline's mother that Susan brought her along to play with her young miss. She does not remember that incident, though, or else she would have known Tiffany was her nanny's daughter. Back to the point, Eveline had refused to talk with anyone and kept calling for her demise mother. Watching the girl cry day and night worried everyone so much that Susan decided to bring Tiffany along. She thought the girl would benefit from having someone her own age assist her in forgetting her suffering and helping her recover from the trauma. Susan's suggestion was well received by Jonathan as well, who allowed her to bring her daughter along. Eveline was able to overcome her loneliness thanks to Tiffany's presence, but it also planted the seed of greed in Tiffany's heart. She was astounded by Eveline's extravagant lifestyle and princess-like treatment. She was loved not just by her family, but also by the people who worked for them, and her mother proved to be one of them. She would take care of Eveline as if she were her own daughter, making sure she received proper care. Sadly, Tiffany's visitation was short-lived because her father forbade her from leaving the house the following day and forced her to help with household chores, while her mother worked to support the family. So callous was the man that he asked Susan to allow her daughter to work as a maid there for her to make money as well. Those words from Jacob caused a huge rift between the couple, to the point where he used his hands on Susan, forcing her to listen to him. Wait and see how I will put an end to this penury by marrying the most popular guy in my college. I am going to take over the Winston family as their mistress and lock you up, Tiffany exclaimed, dreaming over her father's misery and a lavishing life with Gabriel, when suddenly a phone call broke her dream, retrieving her from it. Tiffany furrowed when she saw a familiar name flashing on the screen. Why the hell is calling me now? She muttered ridiculously. She did not want to talk to anyone, but she answered the phone because of the caller's persistence. Hi, Alex, Tiffany said with a drop of her voice, sounding sweet and genuine. Alex, who was growing restless, exhaled a breath of relief at last the moment Tiffany answered his call, but soon the fear on his face crawled back and he muttered, Tiffany, there is a serious issue. Tiffany's eyes grew cold and her face became icy as she listened to him speak for the first time. The next day, Eveline woke up as usual, had her breakfast, and was about to leave when an unexpected guest appeared at her house doorstep. Gabriel entered the house and stopped to observe Eveline standing in front of him. Though Eveline was not prepared to see Gabriel so early in the morning, she could not resist inquiring now that he was at her house. Gabriel, what brings you here so early? Eveline was still antagonistic, but this time Gabriel did not take offense at what she said. Rather, he gave Eveline a slender smile that nearly stunned her. I am here to pick you up. And who said I will go with you? Eveline recovered from her stupor and gawked at Gabriel suspiciously. It was weird to see Gabriel suddenly showing his concern for her. But for his kind information, she wasn't going to fall for it. Gabriel was about to speak when Jonathan suddenly made his appearance, breaking their intense stare and advancing swiftly toward him. Gabriel, what are you doing here, son? Jonathan asked, standing next to them. Gabriel had been hoping to see Eveline since last night, but he was unable to find a suitable excuse to go see her. Due to his reputation for being aloof and his difficulty expressing his emotions, Gabriel's parents frequently wondered about him and would have assumed the worst if he had suddenly told them he wanted to meet Eveline. So he gave up on seeing her last night and decided to visit early, but not alone. "Good morning, Uncle Jonathan," Stefan said, beaming from the front door. Jonathan wished Stefan a good morning with a smile. "Have you three decided to go together today?" he asked. Jonathan, who was used to seeing the boys visit Eveline because they were well known to be childhood friends, was surprised, as he didn't expect them to show up early in the morning. Stefan looked at Gabriel before forcing an awkward smile. "Yes, Uncle, that is correct. You realize that it has been days since we drove together. So today we decided to bring Eveline along since we go to the same college," Stefan remarked. Eveline furrowed as she clearly caught Stefan lying. Though carefree, he had a terrible habit of lying, especially in front of her, who knew him intimately. "Okay, it's good to be nostalgic," Jonathan said before looking at the time on his wristwatch. "Okay, kids, I need to rush for the meeting," he said before turning to face Eveline and kissing her head. Eveline ignored the two and walked out of the house where she found Gabriel's car standing outside. "I am going to sit next to Tony," Stefan declared as he hurried over to the passenger seat beside the driver, forcing Eveline to take the back seat with Gabriel. Groaning frustratingly, Eveline was about to open the door, but Gabriel did it first. "Ladies first," he said politely, causing Eveline to roll her eyes at him before she got inside. Gabriel grinned, hurried over to the other side, and hopped into the car before they took off. Eveline made every effort to ignore Gabriel and turn a blind eye, but Stefan was unable to control his tongue. "So, Eve, what lessons are you taking from Gabriel?" Stefan asked, breaking the silence in the car. Now that Stefan was aware of Gabriel giving marketing lessons to Eveline, he had to cheer his sister for finally able to court his friend openly. Gabriel glanced to his side and watched Eveline gnash her teeth on his irking remark. He didn't know whether he should laugh or get upset because the sight of her glaring eyes at Stefan made him admire her beauty. "Even when she is upset, her beauty doesn't fade," he said to himself, and leaned his hand on the handle, intently staring at her. "Go on, Eve. Tell him how you feel now that you have me as your new coach." "Huh." Eveline gaped at Gabriel's playful side that rarely popped up. However, Stefan, he couldn't help but giggle. "Excuse me, mister. Don't you even think I am happy having you to be the one teaching me? It's because of Professor Beckham's that I had to agree to let you tutor me, or else I wouldn't have shared the same air with you." Gabriel. Stefan. Tony. Eveline didn't hold back her displeasure and blurted out loud, leaving all the three men baffled by her rudeness. Eveline, who was labeled to be the kind young miss, however she was slapping Gabriel left and right with her words. Hey. It was a nice joke, Eve." Stefan felt the air drop inside the car as Gabriel's expression darkened hearing her remark. Stefan knew how much efforts Eveline had put in to make Gabriel acknowledge her feelings, but what he saw today made him doubt whether she truly wanted to court him or she indeed had a chance of heart. "I didn't joke. I meant what I said, and I seriously don't not want to associate with him anymore." She repeated it out loud. Eveline had thought about it and came to conclude that she had to come clean to Gabriel about her feelings towards him that no longer exists. It has been a huge trouble for her ever since everyone learned about her crush towards Gabriel, and since then she had been fighting the eyes of the girls who liked him. However, more than that, Eveline wanted to step aside in order to stop Tiffany from scheming against her, just so she could manage to defame her in Gabriel's eyes. Gabriel looked away as he couldn't hide his anger. Eveline's words were like bee-stinging his heart, making him feel miserable. Stefan realized that the situation was dire between them, so he stopped talking any further until they reached the college. "Stop the car," Eveline suddenly said, seizing Stefan and Gabriel's attention. "What happened, Eve? Why did you stop the car here?" Stefan asked. "I don't want to grab unnecessary attention, especially after what happened yesterday," Eveline stated, ready to step out, but Gabriel stopped her. "Start the car." Eveline furrowed, watching Gabriel instruct the Tony while he gripped her wrist, stopping her from leaving. "What kind of behavior is this, Gabriel?" Eveline irked at his overbearing rudeness. "I should be the one asking you?" Gabriel stated before motioning Tony to follow his instructions. Eveline wriggled, but Gabriel refused to let her go unless the car drove inside the Aspen College gate. "Ah, With a strong jerk, Eveline yanked Gabriel's hand away and snapped, "I am telling you, Gabriel, don't you dare touch me and stop being controlling, because I no longer fancy you." Without wasting a second, Eveline swiftly opened the car's door and walked out. She didn't spare a glance at the onlookers and entered the building. Eveline didn't want to dwell on what Gabriel would think of her or the rest, as for now, her only priority was to find Alex. She desired to confront him and inquire as to why he would post those pictures online. Eveline ran to the second floor and hurried through the hallway to get to the classroom, but she was unable to locate Alex. In addition, several people were now staring down at her, reminding her of their questioning eyes on her. Despite Eveline's best efforts, she could not help but notice the looks they gave her. Eveline darted her eyes towards the person standing behind her and heard her speak politely. "Miss Eveline Miller, will you just step aside? I have to head inside the classroom." Eveline's eyes narrowed at Gracie's sardonic remark, but they widened quickly enough when she saw Tiffany standing next to her. Despite her confusion, Eveline moved aside to observe Gracie and Tiffany pass her. Although Eveline would have ignored Tiffany, the derisive expression in her eyes caused her to clench her fist. She was certain that Tiffany was the one who shared those pictures, but Alex turned out to be the real culprit, and that did not make much sense. Eveline rolled her eyes and sighed before walking to her seat. She was wondering if it was because of her that Alex didn't show up, and that left her disheartened as she lost her chance of confronting him. Meanwhile, in the deserted playground far from the main building, a boy was shoved in the direction of the tree, pinning his face against the trunk as he sobbed in pain. "Please let me go. What have I done?" Alex sobbed as he struggled to free himself from the clutch, but Stefan's palm held tight to his face until his hand's veins burst. "And why should we listen to you?" Pressing his face deeper into the tree trunk, Stefan mumbled while clenching his jaw. Stefan and Gabriel picked Alex up from the front gate and dragged him to the quiet side of the playground, where nobody went. Gabriel refused to spare Alex when they discovered that he had posted those images and confronted him about why he had done so. "How about you tell us the truth and we let you go?" When Alex heard Gabriel's voice from the side, his mouth dropped open in disbelief. Alex swallowed hard as Gabriel stood there with his hands stuffed in his pocket and a deadpan expression on his face. "What truth are you talking about?" Alex stammered as he tried to hide his fear, but as soon as Gabriel moved closer, his nervousness flared up. With Stefan holding onto him tightly, Alex struggled to free himself, but was unable to do so because he couldn't fight the strength of a trained martial arts student. Gabriel gawked at Alex before signaling Stefan to let go of him. Stefan yanked his hand away from Alex's face and gasped for air, frantically moving his gaze between the two tall frames. With a flash of panic still visible, Alex cried, I will complain against you two to the dean. How can you bully me this way?" as he attempted to move past them. "Go ahead and we will disclose your truth to Dean Marshall. Be prepared to get expelled from the college then," Gabriel said, and Alex halted hastily. Dread marred Alex's face as he shot an anxious stare at Gabriel. "I told you I didn't do anything," Alex stated, but the next moment he was grabbed by his collar. "I am going to ask you one last time. Tell me the truth, and you will be spared, body intact." For the first time, Alex began to perspire drops of sweat as he saw the brutal side of Gabriel. His words, spoken so coldly by someone who barely got along with anyone, were chilling him. "What do you want to hear?" Alex finally caved into his threat, letting go of his stubbornness and trying to cooperate. Eveline was growing agitated, wondering why Alex had not visited the college, but she was even more irritated by Gracie's friendship with Tiffany. From what she could recall, Gracie did not enjoy hanging out with people, especially those who were closer to her. However, her developing friendship with Tiffany was making her doubt a lot. In an attempt to concentrate on the lecture, Eveline pushed her thoughts aside, but then she was struck with the idea of meeting with Gabriel for a class after lunch. Eveline grimaced, her mood darkening at the prospect of spending time with Gabriel, but she was powerless to say no because she had already told Professor Beckham that she would allow him to tutor him until he returned. Eveline wouldn't have bothered to hire a tutor, but she had lost her faith in studies after her life entangled with Gabriel. She ignored her career in favor of winning his heart. Within the confines of their mansion, where she would handle all household chores by herself, her life was struck down. Eveline forgot during those years that she was a gifted student with aspirations and objectives. Despite how exhausting life was after marriage, she gave up her dreams for her husband's love. Scoff, Eve, your life was no better than an abandoned dog. As a wave of melancholy passed through her, bringing with it the bitter reality of her existence, Eveline thought to herself that even her supposed friend was trying to convince her that she was mentally ill. The sound of the bell interrupted Eveline's thoughts, causing her to lose track of when the class ended. Eveline took a moment to compose herself before exhaling deeply and gathering her belongings in preparation for her trip to the library. Eveline's steps stopped dead in their tracks as she approached the door and saw Gabriel waiting for her outside. Not only did his appearance startle her, but the students were equally taken aback by the smile that appeared on his face as soon as he saw her. Tiffany sneered as she watched the scene play out in front of her eyes, and then quickly glanced at Eveline. Gabriel had never before shown up in their classroom, and his sudden appearance startled nearly everyone. Nevertheless, it was too clear who he was waiting for. Gabriel, what brings you here? Intending to start a conversation, she hurried towards him but was met with a chilly glare from Gabriel, who then proceeded to walk in the direction of Eveline. Are you finished with your classes? He inquired, leaving Eveline frozen in place. There was this gentleness lingering in his eyes and the smile on his face that almost got her fainting. What the hell I'm seeing? Somebody please pinch me. This man isn't real. This can't be Gabriel. Eveline was mentally freaking out as she took in what she was seeing, but soon the chattering around broke her trance, and she took a step back. Yes, I did. But why does that concern you? The pupils were shocked to see Eveline reverting to her icy attitude towards Gabriel. Despite being the one to publicly admit her crush on Gabriel, they believed Eveline had been overly brave and callous toward him. Isn't she taking advantage of Gabriel's kindness? One student whispered. It is surprising that Gabriel tolerates such a nasty girl, the other person remarked. Maybe she is taking his words lightly because they have known each other since they were young. Tiffany grinned at the gossip going on behind her back, but unlike before, she refrained from stepping in to defend Eveline. An ungrateful girl like her would never appreciate anything in life. She was born with a silver spoon in her mouth, achieved everything she set her sights on, and is now proud to be Jonathan Miller's daughter. This time, Gracie was the one to speak up without holding back and disparaging Eveline in front of everyone. Gracie saw Eveline's cruel side the other day and concluded that Eveline was nothing more than a spoilt brat who used people for her own convenience, with her outward appearance of kindness being merely a front. Gabriel arched his brow and glanced at Gracie. The smile on his face vanished, and the next second he grabbed onto Eveline's wrist, pulling her to stand next to him. Gabriel's abrupt action left everyone speechless, but Tiffany was particularly taken aback as she had not anticipated his boldness. It was his way of letting everyone see that Eveline had his back, and whoever spoke ill of her would have to face him. Eveline looked at their hand and then around the class. She was as shocked as everyone else when Gabriel took hold of her hand. But before she could say anything to get away, he pulled her from the classroom. Tiffany furrowed, watching the two leave, and was about to follow them when suddenly Gracie stopped her. Where are you going? Aren't you coming with me for lunch? Gracie asked, darting her gaze in the direction where Eveline and Gabriel walked away. The moment they two disappeared from her sight, Tiffany scowled mentally, cursing Gracie for interrupting her movement. Stupid, she muttered mentally before putting on a smile on her face and facing Gracie. Yeah, let us go, she said, and they both exited the classroom. But her curiosity about where Gabriel had taken Eveline persisted. Gabriel kept on walking, ignoring Eveline's warning until they finally stepped out of the main building. Leave me, Gabriel, she screamed this time, yanking her hand from his hold. Deflated, Gabriel held up his hand and saw the fire within her ferocious eyes. Does she detest me so much that she gets upset when I touch her? Gabriel raised the question, but didn't voice it out loud before he took a step closer to Eveline. Do they always make such hurtful remarks about you? He asked, staring at her with intense anger. Why does it concern you? Eveline asked, her brow furrowed as she continued to brush her wrist, relieving the pain from his grip. It's not about you but me, so be it. Please do not interfere with my problems. I can handle them myself. Gabriel was taken aback by Eveline's direct comment, but he managed to hide his shock and respond, It does concern me since you are connected to me. Any word against you indirectly falls on me. Have you forgotten that you are crushing on me? Eveline blinked confusingly before letting out a humorless scoff. Then allow me to clarify, Gabriel. I no longer have a crush on you, so keep yourself out of my problems, Eveline declared without an ounce of empathy in her words. However, her every word pricked Gabriel's heart. It made him realize how foolish he had been to allow Eveline to harbor any kind of sentimentality toward him. Abruptly, he saw her smiling face in his thoughts, and he stepped out in front of her very carefully. But I don't accept it, not until you find out who was behind those photos, Gabriel stated, causing Eveline to frown at his remark. Did he find Alex was the person who uploaded those photos? Eveline retorted mentally. Did you find the person who posted those photos? Eveline asked, staring intently into his unclouded gray eyes. As if you do not know who it is? Gabriel tilted his head, finding Eveline's remarks absurd. Stefan had told him that Eveline knew who was the person behind those leaked photos. Then why was she behaving clueless when he disclosed about knowing the culprit too? Eveline pondered over his word when a memory about her blurting about the culprit to Stefan crossed her mind, causing her pinch her temple in concern. Gabriel noticed her subtle action and inquired, Are you having headaches? Why did you press your temples? Eveline wanted to yell out in frustration. This overly concerned Gabriel was wrecking her nerves, raising her blood pressure. Gabriel, that's not what I meant to say. Brother Stefan misunderstood my words. Eveline tried to reason, but stopped when she realized she just couldn't tell him about her doubts on Tiffany. Thoughts of Eveline and Gabriel consumed Tiffany's thoughts, and she regretted going to lunch with Gracie. Tiffany could not find the pair in the cafeteria and was curious about their whereabouts. Have you heard? Some students discovered Gabriel and Eveline together in the library yesterday. It seemed like Gabriel was teaching Eveline, Gracie blurted as she was savoring her meal. Tiffany quickly glanced at Gracie, displaying a bewildered expression on her face. Tutoring? She muttered. Yes, I have heard that Eveline requested that Professor Beckham tutor her. However, due to his hectic schedule, Gabriel took his place. As Gracie's words began to make sense, Tiffany's expression became more serious. She recalled that Eveline had once confided in her about her difficulties grasping certain topics for the semester, but she had never considered it a ploy to get Gabriel to join the coaching staff. Even though it was widely known that Professor Beckham was going to leave for a significant seminar on behalf of their college, she still followed him at the last minute to have his most favored students instruct her. The air around Tiffany suddenly became heavier, and she tightened her grip on the spoon. Eveline had never concealed anything from her before, but ever since that day, she had been acting aloof toward her. So this was all her plan to get closer to Gabriel, by playing hard to get. Tiffany was aware of Eveline's feelings for Gabriel, but she was afraid to show them, which is why she agreed to seek her help. Nevertheless, this was Eveline's first action behind her back, and it made her fume. Gracie, I just recalled that I have to collect some notes from Professor Rubik. You enjoy your lunch. We will meet straight for the class. Tiffany excused herself, gathering her bag and walking out of the canteen. Stepping out of the building, Tiffany was on her way to the library when suddenly someone pulled her, bringing her to a secluded spot. Tiffany was about to scream but stopped watching the person standing in front of her. Alex, what kind of behavior is this? With a sudden motion, Tiffany withdrew her hand from him and stepped back. Gasping for air, Alex peered through the wall. You don't know what just happened to me? With his head still turned to the side, as if to avoid being noticed, Alex blurted, almost panicking. Did Eveline confront you? Tiffany asked abruptly, capturing his focus in an instant. Alex's face was as pale as a ghost, and he was shaking all the time before he shook his head. Tiffany was getting irritated, but she knew he owed her a lot right now, so she could not just lash out at him. Tell me, what is it? Tiffany raised her voice, startling Alex, and he quickly covered her mouth. It wasn't Eveline, but Gabriel who confronted me. Tiffany's eyes widened in shock the instant Alex said those words, and she soon started to perspire profusely. Tiffany's expression turned ghostly, as if struck by lightning in the bright daylight, and she slowly lowered his hand to her lips. What did he say? She asked, despite being on the verge of losing it. Alex informed her over the phone yesterday about Eveline's attempt to confront him regarding the pictures. She immediately advised him to lie to her by saying that someone had sent him those pictures. Tiffany was sure Eveline would grow weary in her quest for the truth, but she never imagined Gabriel would be the one to approach him. Alex paused to gather his thoughts before saying, he wanted to know why I took those pictures, and he would make sure that I would be suspended for my actions if I ever lied. Tiffany's mouth dropped open as she heard Gabriel's harsh words. She sensed that this was not a passing threat, but rather one that needed to be verified. And you told him everything, Tiffany muttered, having already witnessed her shortcomings before her eyes. No, I didn't, Alex said, startling Tiffany out of her reverie as she scowled at him in confusion. I am not that foolish to put our lives in danger by being honest with him, he stated. Then how did he spare you? Tiffany asked, curious to know what he actually said. The words I was supposed to tell Eveline, I said it to Gabriel, Alex said, washing all the nervousness off her face. Tiffany clutched her heart and let out a sigh of relief. She was about to have a panic attack, but Alex's astuteness prevented them both from having to deal with the fallout. Then why are you hiding? Tiffany asked abruptly, her usual self taking over. Because I don't want anyone to get suspicious of us. I simply wanted to warn you that Gabriel suddenly seems to be interested in Eveline, and as promised, you have to stop him, Alex warned, making Tiffany gulp in fear. From the moment Alex saw Eveline, he was drawn to her. She was the most attractive girl he had ever seen, but his reserved personality always left him stranded. Alex was always the one left on his own, and rarely made friends because of his eerie appearance, which turned off girls from approaching him. He would consistently take up a bench at the end without anyone ever wanting to converse with him or even acknowledge him. Despite this, he continued to be in awe of the women he saw. He did stalk a couple of people, but Eveline really caught his attention after she once assisted him with an assignment. His heart was won over by her radiant eyes and endearing smile, and he started to follow her until his admiration turned into an obsession. Alex had been watching Eveline the entire time and started to follow her every move, but when he found out that she was partial to Gabriel, a popular guy and her childhood friend, his heart fell. Alex was so desperate to get his hands on Eveline that he set out to find the person who had leaked the rumors about the couple and eventually discovered Tiffany. He had originally intended to destroy Tiffany's reputation as a kind of retaliation, but he soon realized that she was the only one who could help him get closer to Eveline. So he started threatening her, and in the end, she gave in to his demands. The corner of Tiffany's lips curled into a sinister smile and agreed with Alex. Don't worry, I won't let them get closer because Gabriel can only be mine.